called nasal sex. So there's no risk there. It's not a problem. I could do. Hello, Cinders. Nice to see you. Welcome, everyone. As I say, we just wait and see how many people come in. It varies every time, doesn't it? So we'll just give people a few minutes and then we'll start. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Hello. Hope everyone's well. Hello, Mr. P, who says evening, everyone. And Nikki says hi, everyone. And Bun Bun Butt says evening all. And Tits Up says hello all. Welcome back to people who are new. Welcome to people who are new. And welcome back to people who have been before. Really nice to see you all. You can hear that someone has got their microphone on. Please mute it. Will this be recorded? My mum can't make it. I love that. That's not a thing you often hear in a kinky alternative weird workshop, is it? Yes, it is recorded, I assume, by someone in some way. If not, I don't know, maybe I can. Stream is live, so it's live. So is mum when she watches this. Joey, stop trying to pick up Zoe's mum. It's inappropriate. Are you in your new place? Jerry, are you happy in your new place? Wherever you are?
I've been here since the 23rd of December.
Yay. I will try and come and see you at some point, I promise.
Yeah.
So busy, so busy. So as you can tell, some of us do actually know each other in real life. Everyone is as welcome. We get to know people as you know, as you're here more. So there are a few people I actually know. Joey is definitely one of those people that can have his mic off. Poppy, when she comes in, is as well. Everyone else I ask not to. If I try and read out everything down the side, if I miss it, Jerry or someone else, I promise you will remind me in some way, shape or form. Yes, it's recorded for later. So just so everyone knows, as I've said, please turn off your video if you do not want to see your face on here. You know, because it will come up in the video. I do the opposite. I go, oh, fucking hell, that's what I look like. Shit, I forgot it's being recorded. Where's my mascara? Was one of the topics condrop or aftercare related? Is condom drop? Just checking. Yes, so okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Welcome everybody. Post-conference exhaustion for you, I'm assuming, she, her. I can only just see S, sorry. So please don't write to anybody else here. Please don't send any messages before, after, during. Please don't comment on anybody's looks or shapes or size or smiles, anything about them. That's not what this is for. This is not therapy. It can be therapeutic. This is information. It's about education for all of us. And you are welcome to share anything you want to down the side with anything that you know. If you're here as a therapist or a trainee therapist, you can use this as CPD, Career Professional Development. So you are welcome to ask me for a certificate, which I will do, and send on to you. Just send me an email. If you don't have my email, I can always chuck it in the box on the side. Don't send me any other emails, just those, please. Thank you. And we often have 3 subjects. So these started at the beginning of lockdown with the idea, I did every Thursday and every Sunday with London Alternative Market to give somewhere for everyone to come and to talk about these things. And they've grown and grown and grown, and they're now done once a week. And I obviously go to LAM unless I've got something else on, which LAM is always my priority. And I talk live there. So we often tend to have 3 conversations over around half an hour each. So today is about drop and aftercare. So in BDSM terms, for those that don't know, what happens is a lot of people talk about something called sub-drop. I'm going to question that in a minute because we all know I don't like that phrase, but we're going to talk about drop. I'm going to talk about negotiating aftercare within the BDSM scene, post-sex, anything else that you want to look at. I've got to remember what we're talking about today. So that's one of the first things. S is pleased about that, says great. We're also going to talk about what do you do around exes. Now, part of what I want to talk about is planning how to, like, prevention is always better than cure. I mean, says the old fat woman sitting here in front of everyone, prevention is better than cure. However it is. So I want to talk a little bit about relationships and breakups, and then we'll go into what do we do when an ex is in the room and how do we handle that, especially on the scene. Because sometimes on the scene, those things can be very sexual, very obvious, very right in our face. You know, someone's boobs are right here or someone's cunt is right there and we're seeing it, and that's something that I used to call home, for example. So that's very complex and difficult for people. So it's a little bit, yeah, if it can't be avoided, I'm going to go on to that, I promise. And then we're going to talk about, what was I going to talk about at the end? Dronification, I think. Was that it? Yeah, I think I was. So we're going to talk about dronification and what does it mean, and that might be a new term to people, it might not be. So we're going to do those things in those 3 sections. So if you hold on to that thought, snip your tulip 26 and quickly, we'll come back to that. So let's talk about drop. Before we go into drop, I really think what's important for everybody, can we include bad ex metas too, as I suspect I'll have that happen soon enough. Okay. Yes, of course we can. For those who don't know what a meta is, I'll come back to that in a minute, but I'll explain what that means. A meta is a metamor. So in polyamorous relationships or ethical non-monogamous relationships, the person that we are seeing has a partner potentially, and they are a metamor to this person. So if this is Zoe, and this is the person she's seeing, and he or she or they are married or have someone else as well, Zoe's here, this is the person's metamor, so we call them metas, an abbreviation. We have a lot of crap when we talk about BDSM and kink, I think often, so it's really worth explaining. I'm sure most of you know what a meta is. However, I'm also going to probably say it's near enough the same sort of advice, Zoe, overall. So if you feel like you want something similar, just ask me, you know you can. I think part of the thing we need to talk about when we're talking about drop is people have, so let's talk about drop in the real sense, right? So people think drop is exclusive to submissives and people think drop is exclusive to BDSMers. It is not. When we do something that's intensely full of emotions and chemicals, so let's say we play, and by play, it might mean that we have a very intense sex. Hi, Smile from Minnesota. Nice to see you. Welcome. So what we might have in our circumstances is a very heavy scene. There might be some hitting. Clearly, we've all negotiated and done our consent. That would be Luna the dog, which means the other 2 might bark in a minute as well. I bet you're glad you don't play this to get dog barks all the way through. Goose is so fierce. I've got 2 little dogs called Duck and Goose, but they're quite cute, really. So when we have a very intense scene, it's full of a lot of emotions and it's full of a lot of chemicals that we produce internally. Now, that can be because we're playing with a lot of pain. It could be that we're playing with high intensity. It could be that we're working with deprivation of some kind. There's a lot of things happen in a play scene, which means we've had an incredible high. And when we get an incredible high, you've got a dot called Duck. Geez, I've missed lifetimes of news. Well, you have. I mean, you know, I have. It's the same time. Sidetrack. I've got Goose, who is a bitch. She's not. She's very sweet, really. Where have you been, Ivory? I picked the name. So I've got Goose, and then I decided to also get a boy because I want puppies later. I'm really sorry, but I do. So I've got Goose and Duck because that makes perfect sense. Who looks like a wanker when I'm down the beach walking? I tell you, definitely me when you're screaming out, Goose, Duck. People look at you as if you're mad. So clearly, Domina is somebody we've met. And in fact, actually, Domina is a really good example of how we can integrate. So I didn't know Domina before. We didn't know Gallant. We didn't know any of her poly family and her BDSM family. And they came down to LAM because of these workshops. And then we met them. How cool is that? So I really love these workshops because they create these wonderful spaces for people to get to know each other as well. I've got no idea. And hi, Mark, I don't know what I'll call them, but let's get back to this. So drop can happen after an intense scene or intense period of time that we spend with somebody. In real life, you and I might actually call that some kind of happiness hangover or some kind of low after a high. If you think about addiction, we get lots and lots of drugs externally, and it makes us feel a certain way. And when we feel a certain way, we love feeling that way. It feels really nice. So then when we don't have the drug in our system, we want to feel like we felt. We feel really low or nothing will work. So we use the drug again. That's what addiction is about. Lance says, thank you for acknowledging drop happens to more than subs. It takes a lot to orchestrate a scene for your sub bottom. Everyone needs their state checked on. I agree with you, and we're going to come into that in a minute. So everyday people suffer from drop. Ivory and her partner slaves came from Scotland to stay with me. We'd never met before. It was great. Yes, this is a lovely way to get to know people. So if you do something like a show, or you're a musician, or if you do something intense, really intense, that you love doing, that gives you a high, let's say you're in a competition, let's say you're an athlete or sports or anything else as well, then that intense high at some point will probably give you a drop. If you try and think of the last time you were incredibly happy and you had the most incredible time with somebody and you really miss them afterwards, we're not talking about depression. we're talking about a state of lowness, what we can call really low and not feel really good. And then we really miss people, like Domina's just said, she gets intense post Jerry drop. We can feel really low when we're not the world feels a little bit duller, like in a mist, and like honey, you're walking through something really sticky and it's really difficult. And we feel a bit sad about it. And there's no technical term for this apart from drop, and that's very much comes from the BDSM scene. However, what we know neurologically, that there are specific areas in the brain called hedonic hot spots. So hedonism is that look for something that makes us feel very good in our own space. Hedonism, we're looking, oh, this feels really lovely and we like it. There's not a lot of research into this. If you want to look it up, I'm just listening to Tom Daly's book, The Olympics Has a Huge Drop. Exactly, tits up, exactly that. And Domina says, before getting into kink, I experienced this after conventions called Postcon Blues. Yes. So post anything, that's what drop is. It happens to children, it happens to adults, it happens to everybody when you do something intense. So these hedonic hotspots that we have, well, we don't quite know how many there are. If you want to look any of it up, there was a piece of research from Michigan. So you can look up hedonic hotspots, Michigan, and you'll come up with something. So you'll find that if you want to look at it. So these hotspots kind of coordinate in the brain to create wanting, which is triggered by our neurotransmitter dopamine. So our brain works in very interesting ways, and then we work out, well, this is quite nice, I know I want this, this feels really nice, and it gives us enjoyment, pleasure, happiness, and we feel really good about it. So it's a nice thing, and I want to do that again, that feels really nice. We don't understand enough about this yet, but we know these hedonic hotspots are there. One of the other theories that can come into this is opponent process theory. Our brain works in quite interesting ways, mistress of understatement. Well, do you know what? You know me, even the words I'm using now, I feel really uncomfortable using. Look, if this is your study, that's fine. I think it's really important to just talk so that people can understand what we mean by drop, and then throw the odd thing in about the brain, throw the odd thing about theory, throw the odd thing in about therapy if somebody wants it as well. But just try and have a fucking normal conversation with another human being, because all of us try and be too complex and try and make things too clever. So there was a guy many years ago called Richard, many years ago, I'm old, 56, this was in the 80s. He came up with this idea called the opponent process theory. And it means that when you feel one emotion, you're kind of going to feel the other, a bit like that Newton's cradle, like game that we always play, like with the balls in the office. So here we are, it just knocks out the other end. And in fact, it's interesting, I talked to somebody about American politics earlier. If you look at the states of the presidents, I'm not going to go into politics, that's not what this is about, so no arguing about politics, right? But what you have is quite interesting, is occasionally you have somebody, so you've got Republicans and Democrats, occasionally you've got one where it's doubled, but often what you find is it's their turn and their turn, their turn and their turn, because we tend to swing out. We tend to swing out to what human beings do around their experience, and it's how we work. So we talk that this, when he talks about opponent process theory, it's a physiological phenomenon. So our body reacts to this challenge, and because of the reaction we have to that challenge, that takes us to the other place, to almost overcompensate in some way, shape or form. So you could argue potentially that's about drop as well. So you could say that. And also, one of the things I talk about a lot is when people, I've written recently, I know that's a bit of a bingo for people. Some people play bingo because I mention things all the time. I write a lot on FetLife. Well, a fair bit. Someone experienced Hedonic after big presentations. There you go, Mark, exactly. And souls, endorphins are very addictive. And as dominants, you must be able to identify that. I agree with you. And as subs. And do you know what? Let's even take BDSM out of it. Human beings, we have to learn that those highs can feel really nice. Beth says, my drop often looks like obsessive, need to see and hear my partner the next day. We don't live together, we typically video chat to help. Yep, and that's what Beth has just said is very important, not because of what she said, they've said, I don't know your gender, I apologise and I can't see you, so I've made an assumption with the name, so I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. Please do inform me if it's any different. What Beth has just said there is really important, because we have to understand what it is that we need. So part negotiation is really important. I've also written that intensity is not the same as intimacy, and I've talked about other things around that as well before over the years, where we've all been talking, having these workshops and in writings. If we live at such a high, with so much dopamine, with so much stuff going on in our brains, we will not survive. there's been many a film where, God, has anyone seen, what's that film about? Percy and the Lightning Thief. Has anyone seen that film? It's a fantasy film. I'm really showing myself up here because I love it. I love shit films. I'm terrible. But in Percy and the Lightning Thief, it's all about the Greek gods, really. And this lad, Percy Jackson, thank you very much, Lance. At least you're with me. We're both absolutely not okay in our own way. So there's a point where they are supposed to go on looking for something that's really important, the lightning bolt. And at one point, they go into this place and they're given these very hedonistic drugs, and they don't realize that time goes, and they don't realize that things aren't okay for them. When we live in a completely hedonistic place, we have no idea of fear. Our fear system and responses don't work in the same way. When we're totally off our faces or we're totally in a very, very happy place, it's not good for us. So we don't understand predators, we don't understand threat, and it's not practical. So it's not very stable. It's not very cautious for us. So we have to be very careful. So we have to look at that in everyday life as part of drop. I think, again, what Beth did was really important. Beth has identified their own drop. We all have our own way of being. So I think what's really important is to, really sorry, or I have to leave, unfortunately. Oh, I hope you're okay. I hope I haven't offended you in any way, maybe. So we have to negotiate for what we want. Now, if you don't know how you're going to drop, you don't know how to negotiate. So what we have to say is, I don't know what's going to happen. So can we leave it open? Please, can we contact each other or do something to see what it is that I need, because this is new to me, so I don't know. So that's hard to do, isn't it? To admit that we maybe don't know what to do about something. I think it's really important to turn around and look at what aftercare is. House issues, oh dear. Oh no, I'm really sorry to hear that. I wish you well. Catch up on YouTube. Listen to me. Oh my God, like, catch up on YouTube with Lamb. So I wish you well. I hope that's all okay and not too traumatic in any way, shape or form. So when we're negotiating, we negotiate a lot of what happens in the moment. This is a little bit like being pregnant, right? We think about the birth, we think about the pregnancy, and we think about the nursery, and we think about the baby and what we're going to buy. We don't think about having a bloody 20 to 30-year-old or a 50-year-old as a kid. No one thinks that far ahead. And drop can be like this. Aftercare can be like that. What is it that we need? So, and everything has to be clear. People say don't assume. It's really right, but also don't assume that someone understands or that they know. It's really important that you do negotiate what you need in the form of aftercare. And I'm going to cover that in a minute, of all the little things that we can do to help. So it's not easy. I have a writing on FetLife that's all about negotiating and how we work. And I think it's really important to learn to negotiate what it is that you need, especially in BDSM, because when you are in a very hedonistic place, or your chemicals are really flaring up for you in that moment, that's too late to negotiate in. It's too late to say, oh, by the way, tomorrow I need this. Your head isn't going to say that. So we need to do it before. So what is drop? As I said, there's these hedonistic receptors in our brain that say this is quite high, we're having such a nice time. It is worth educating yourself. There are many theories on drop. There is a guy on FetLife, Compassionate Sadist, I think his name is. I would have to try and remember. I can't really remember what his name is, but he really writes well about endorphins, adrenaline, about the science of it and what happens as well. So we used to talk about endorphins being dropped in loads and 10 minutes and all these things, but that's turned out to be such a fallacy. And it's not quite right. So we need to research those things and work out what we're doing. And he talks about the blood-brain barrier, and he really goes into it about what it is. And he talks about endorphins creating like a soup covering the brain in its own way. So we feel very, very lost. So when we're in drop, we're kind of got like a flooded brain. That's the best way to think about that. So you can really go into it. Drop or sub-drop can last for days. It says souls, 1, 2, 3. Always, oh, I've got a bit right there. Always check on your partner, even when you're done with aftercare. I never knew till my mentor educated me. Yeah, I think that's true. So the very important part of that is it can do. So for some people, they might not get drop at all. For some people wanting aftercare, they might want for a week. We just vary, don't we? And Zoe says, Christmas is difficult for myself and my mum coming up to more for me. But I felt it wasn't too bad over Christmas, and I'm looking forward to seeing people and events again. My mum, however, gets really low coming up to Christmas. She had me and my brother. Brother lives at home for Christmas, and then my brother and his son Boxing Day, and really felt good and enjoyed it. After that, she dropped and has been in a low mood, not wanting to do anything. I think we have to be careful about how long drop lasts and where drop and depression start to cross over, and when we're not feeling okay. Drop really shouldn't last more than a couple of days. If it does, it might promote some form of feeling low. That's not necessarily full-blown depression or clinical depression, but we might be in a depressed state and we might not feel well. So sometimes it's really worth going to get some help as well. She knows about drop. Is there any way for it not to hit us so badly the next day, and how to get out of this mood headspace? I've told her to try and do things and hopefully she'll get back to herself quicker. I didn't realize she was struggling so much. So she's done one of the first things that she needed to do: reach out and talk to someone, reach out and ask for help and support. Look, people can't always help and support you. So I think we have to work out ways to do it for ourselves as well. And there are people that we can go to and ask. So let's have a look at the sort of things we can do. The more you play about with your chemicals, the more your response is going to be. Lance says, like athletes, your body and brain needs warm up, sustainability during, and cool down afterwards in simplest terms. So drop should always be assumed to be part of the process. I agree with that. And I think we can ask someone. So like for me, I don't get drop. I don't get drop. I don't get drop when I play. I get drop when I put on a show with a load of kids and I really miss the rehearsals afterwards and I miss seeing the kids. So we all get drop, whatever that means, happiness, hangover, whatever we're saying, in different ways. I think what we need to always do is have an incredible conversation. That's what we always need to do. And think about this in our lives so it can happen to all of us. So what can you actually do? So kind of what Lance is saying there, before you do anything, pre-mortem it. Pre-morteming is like post-morteming. So when something goes wrong, we look back and say, well, that's what went wrong. So sometimes to pre-mortem instead is to say, I know that people probably play bingo again because I talk about this a lot, but think of everything that could possibly happen. You don't have to have an in-depth conversation about it. You don't have to do everything to the nth and core degree. What we have to learn to do is say, this could happen, so possibly I'm going to look at this. And what I tend to do is just a little spider map type thing of, right, drop, what does this mean? So what can I plan for before, after, during? What do I want from that? What could that look like? What could help me? What do I need to set up? What are 3 answers to each problem that I bring up? Because the answers you come up with yourself are often better than the answers that other people come up with. A lot of people say, oh, you're dropping, have some sugar. Fuck that, don't take sugar. You see it at Dungeons and Pubs all the time. Lollipops and chocolates and sweets. You're much better off with some protein. You're much better off eating well beforehand. If you give yourself a sugar high, you're in drop, you give yourself a sugar high and you drop again. So you're doing this. What we want is, yes, there's a high, then there's a drop, but we want to come up and we've got a nice slow fluctuation, normality, reality in life. So anyway, we'll come on to that in a minute. So please look at pre-morteming. You could talk to somebody else. You could help, like Zoe, you and your mum could sit down and do this together. You could have a conversation and say, right, mum, so how are you going to prep for this? What are you going to do to look after yourself? Again, really boring, I'm sorry. I went through chemo and I lived alone at the time, and occasionally my kids would come home for part of it. So I really had to think, what is it I'm going to need? How am I going to feel? Well, I ended up in hospital with every single chemo. So I was like, okay, I need paracetamol in my bedside table. Not only do I need paracetamol, I need a drink. So I always have one of these by the side of my bed with orange squash or water in it. I always know that I will have to look after myself. I always keep cashmere socks by the side of my bed, because actually when I put warm socks on, it helps me bring my temperature down, because I was trying to strip off, or I can try and get in a lukewarm shower. So always have that plan going. So Sol says temperature and water hydration is key, warm with a blanket. Yes, and it can be for some people. Cara says a banana can be good, a bit of protein, some potassium, and lots of other good stuff. And Cinder says, you're describing my home right now. I have meds and emergency stashes all the way through my house. I feel for you, Cinder, if that's what you're going through. Yeah, I really get that. So every bizarre possibility, no matter how ridiculous it is, talk about what you'll need. So it could be that you turn around and you say, well, I will need to spend £1,000 because it will make me feel better. So we're looking at that miracle question. We're looking at that miracle question of, what if you won the lottery? Not maybe if there were no consequences, but if you had everything, what would you do in that moment? What would make you feel better? And then how do I do that on a budget? How do I bring that down? So that budget might be financial, it might be emotional, it might be a lot of those things. So how can I bring that down to help myself work that way? You pre-mortem naturally when you go on holiday, you have you get some form of insurance, or at least I hope you do. If you don't, that's up to you. But or you stop the milk coming if you have a milkman, otherwise it all builds up. Or you might think, like, if I went on holiday, I really have to make sure I've got someone to look after my dogs. It'd be really stupid if I don't. I'm really gonna hurt. So we do pre-mortem, we think about what could happen. So that's something I would definitely do. And before you play, manage your expectations to negotiate. Managing your own expectations is often where we're most disappointed. Well, I thought you'd do this, you should do this, and you must do that. Those shoulds, those oughts, those musts. No, they're not the other person's problem, they're your problem. So how do you ask for what you want, and how do you communicate, and how do you take your own expectations into a realistic aspect? Because if you say, well, I need you to take 3 days off work, most people are going to say, fuck that, I can't do that. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. What's a good in between? Can I video call you in the morning? Can I video call you in the evening? Is there something else that we can do? So you have to find a slightly different way. Start with the ideal, work your way down. Zoe says, I've asked her to keep busy and not let things build up. Today, she's been doing some shelves in the kitchen, which she's been wanting to do for maybe 18 months. So I'm proud of that. That sounds like a really good idea. We get a miniature dopamine hit when we complete a task. So having lots of little things that we can actually do and feel good about, it can help. Can drop be a trigger for issues in the subconscious mind? Yes, it can, Louise. That's a great question. If we all of a sudden feel low and then we don't do anything, we get a lot of release when we have played with that level of chemicals. And there's a lot of relief in that as well. So when we sit, a lot of people who are busy human beings, when they sit for the first time, they go, oh shit, I really don't feel good. Or it could be a pattern. It could show something in somebody else. It doesn't mean it definitely is. And yes, it can be, because that drop afterwards can make you feel like a real shitty, horrible human being. It can be really huge for some people. It can be like, for some people, it even is a reason to avoid play because they can't control what's going on afterwards, which is why we're going to look at some of these things that we can do. And some of us, I don't know, look, disappointment is one of the biggest killers. We can feel really lonely afterwards, and loneliness is a horrible feeling. It's okay for you to stop. So talking is really important, okay? Talking to other people really helps. Our brains will reward us for naming emotions. So if you imagine that you're going on holiday and there is a, or on the tube, whatever, and there is a bag there, and that bag isn't looked at for quite a while, and you're okay, but you've noticed that there's a suitcase there, and you're like, okay, I'm sure it's nothing, it's fine. And then 20 minutes later, you went, no, somebody must have forgotten it, but fuck, I'm feeling a bit cautious now because it might be an unexploded bomb. So, because we're always taught to look out for suitcases, aren't we? And then let's imagine that you then call somebody, they come over, and they're like, woo, boom, off it goes in this special magic bubble that never hurts anybody. And we get this incredible relief because we're like, phew, there's nothing there. If you don't name your feelings, and this sounds crazy, if you don't learn how to name your feelings and identify them in the best way you can, you are full of these little suitcases that are potentials to explode at any time and that can hurt us. So actually learning to understand what you're actually feeling is a really good idea. So talking can really help us. However, there is a talk caveat. There's a big talk caveat for me. Like, it's really good to say, I feel fucked off, or I'm scared, or I'm sad, or I'm going to share my paranoid fantasy. Brené Brown talks about story. I talk about paranoid fantasy. Well, they're going to leave me because they've realised I'm an utter fucking whore after last night. I was there with 10 cocks inside my mouth. Big jaw this person has, right? Just go with me for a minute. So I feel really, really horrible now. So all their stuff comes up in that moment. Goes, oh, that's it. They're just going to leave me. That's awful. So it's really good to say, actually, I'm scared. Not just say the talk about the thoughts. What does that mean? I'm scared. I'm really scared. That's much better to say. Sol said, one of the best lessons my mother taught me in life is don't expect anything from anyone. That way you won't be disappointed. So for me, I just hope. I think hope can cause disappointment. I think if I negotiate with you and you agree it, I'm going to have a fucking expectation of you. If you let me down, that means I might feel a bit sad, and it means I might feel a bit angry, but it tells me never to negotiate with you again. That's where I go with that sort of thing. You're out. If you can't back up what you negotiated and what you said, and this is a bloody good reason. I haven't heard from my sister all day, and that's really unusual. And I was like, shit, maybe I should go round there because she has cancer, and like, fuck, should I worry or whatever? And she just texted me and said, I'm really sorry, I fainted 5 times today. Nick and I have the most awful diarrhea and vomiting. We've got this awful bug. I was like, have you checked your gas? Like, Jesus, let's really make sure you're okay. It's unusual. Like, negotiate negotiate, talk. It's really important. Name what's going on. Domina says, it's surprising how bad we can be. It's something that seems like it should be very obvious or natural. Do you know what? One of the expressions we say is, well, it goes without saying. It never fucking goes without saying. That's one of the most idiotic, moronic expressions I've ever heard. Well, it goes without saying. It doesn't. It always needs to be said. And we also, we're not, if you imagine that people are like volcanoes, right? So mummy, volcano, could be mummy, daddy. It could be, I don't care what the gender setup is, and I don't care if it's poly. Like, that's not the point of this. So we then have baby volcanoes, and we have these small volcanoes, and they're taught how to have the same smoke signals. But actually, that's a heap of shit, isn't it? Because we're just doing what we're supposed to do. So we're taught the wrong language. We're not taught really what our feelings are. And that's the lava, so it eats us up inside. It's not very good for us. Mark says, how good are in-person pro-doms, online pro-doms at negotiating, providing aftercare? I'm assuming they don't, but it seems worth asking. Okay, I would argue that if you pay for aftercare, you might get it. I would argue that a lot of pro-doms won't do it, and some will do if you start to negotiate it, but it might cost you because it's part of their time. Because you come to them for a service, the service ends when the time ends, which is fair enough. That's the negotiation. So that's a bit different. Charlotte, I get tired and achy for a couple of days, like a hangover without a headache. Yep. I find having time to hang out with my play partner immediately after play helps a little. And then all I need is a quick check-in and to be left alone. So no other social engagements for a couple of days. So you kind of retire and withdraw and go into that hermit mode. Karis, something which can help, especially for people who don't know emotions well, is the emotions wheel. Give me a moment, I'll find one. Thank you. You know me, I'm always going to say the PNAS study. Jerry's probably got it and he's going to put it up in 1 second. The PNAS study also shows where we feel emotions by the activity in our body, which helps us. Oh, that's interesting. I'm really active here. I'm really active here. Oh, gosh, I'm feeling angry. Or, oh gosh, I'm feeling shame. It can be a really good way to teach people where their emotions lie in their body through research. So funny just said that Karis Gallant, and I'm just chatting about that. There you go. Jerry says to Mark, it's down to you. If you want to pay extra, so then we're saying the same thing. But you must remember you're paying for their time. It's up to you what you do with it. And Charlotte says the emotional ones are good. And Sarah says that Dominic, I think we can be bad at communication because of fear of vulnerability and rejection. Both fears should be worked on. To become more confident at discussing vulnerable topics. However, Sarah, what I'm going to add to that in this situation is you are going to be vulnerable potentially, because if you are doing this, there is going to be a vulnerability there. So we have to learn to ask for what we need if we can't give it to ourselves. Touching on this, some people grow up in environments where emotions are always ignored. Absolutely. Listen, emotions are taught. Emotions aren't, they're felt, but their interpretation is taught. And recent research also showed us that they're not quite as hardwired as we thought they were. So the research around emotions now is it's all about patterns and predictors. So it's our experience, as you say, that makes that a certain way, makes us a certain way. Thank you, Jerry, for the link. That's really kind of you. I appreciate you. And Domina says, Sarah, I agree, but I was speaking more about how some people actually really struggle to identify what they're feeling in the first place, and then communicating that is the next problem. Absolutely, always start with ourselves. So the talk caveat, if you have trauma and you have a serious form of trauma, talking can be a re-traumatization. So if that's going to happen, please go and ask a professional about that. If potential trauma has that emotion body map is fascinating. I know, right? I print one out for everyone. Like, everyone should have one. It tells you, go, fuck, I didn't realize I'm angry. Hence solution focused therapy. No, Mark, hence thousands of therapies, right? There isn't one therapy that's way better than the other one. There are some techniques that are used for people at different times. I would argue that transaction analysis looks at solutions. I would argue that solution-focused therapy does. I would argue that dialectical behavioral therapy does solutions. Like, they all do that. So there are hundreds. As therapists, we tend to say, I think mine's good, or this is good, or that's perfect. There's no such thing. And people have really different responses to different forms of therapy. It's mainly about the person that you're working with more than anything. And people say, oh, therapy isn't about solutions. Actually, it depends what you're negotiating with the therapy that you want, because some people will give you a lot of solution-focused therapy that isn't actually solution-focused therapy. They will do lots of solution focusing for you to help you. And CBT talks about solutions as well fairly often. DBT especially. So the talk caveat comes, so sometimes we need to do third party. If you have somebody who has reenacted a trauma or has some form of trauma, sometimes just doing like the third party can really help. Rather than saying, I felt this, I did this, this happened to me, please be careful. Sometimes you can say, well, when she was there, when he was there, when they were there, when the cat was there, like whatever descriptor you want to use, just withdraw slightly, disassociate on purpose, not psychologically, but actually disassociate yourself. This is where it gets really complex. I think it's really dangerous if we do too much with people with extreme trauma who could potentially go into a traumatic place, but that's a whole other workshop. So if somebody has a very traumatic response, physical boundaries are really important around trauma as well. Don't engage them, don't squish them unless they completely give you permission to do so. Often an arm on the shoulder and an arm around the other arm can help. That's about boundaries, but that also might be too much. Sometimes you just need to leave someone alone, and sometimes they need to go and speak to someone that they're okay with. A lot of people reenact trauma as part of BDSM. That can work well, but it only works well, and it really works well, and it's all perfect. As soon as one tiny aspect of that goes wrong, the trauma can be horrific. So please be careful around that one as well. So again, caveats, talk caveats. Please talk to a professional, please talk to people, and please warn people if you have trauma responses that you may potentially have one as part of drop or as part of what's going on in the scene. So make sure you've got the right aftercare afterwards. Like I know somebody who has very traumatic experiences to play. They tend to play on a day when they've got therapy the day after. That's a brilliant idea. Like that's a very simple idea. So that can really work well as well. We can really ruminate. Our thoughts can really get in our way after a session. We can be negative. We can be self-depreciating. We can build ourselves up too heavily. We can say, oh my God, I can't believe I showed them that part of my body. I can't believe I was that sort of slut. I can't believe I was that sort of dominant and forceful. Can't believe I slapped them. I can't believe I punched them. I can't believe I did all of these things. It's really bad for us. And the more we talk about those things, the worse we get. And then we can get into a shame spiral. And shame isn't that what I did was bad. Shame is I am a bad person for doing it. That's the way to think about it. Guilt is what I did. Shame is the person for the doing. That's a very brief description of shame. Very brief. So, go and talk to somebody you trust. Try and think about these things before. How am I likely to feel about myself? If you've been brought up in an extremely religious place and you went to a convent and all of a sudden, again, you've got 10 cocks in your mouth or whatever, or fists everywhere. Like if you're doing something extreme, whatever that means, because we're all different at different levels, you might have a shame response. So shame needs sharing. It's always a good solution. Shame needs sharing, shame needs compassion. And you're very likely to talk to yourself really badly. I think regret after a scene is a very dangerous thing. That's why I think we have to think about these things before. What did they do, Jerry? What did Ivory do? I won't ask. Just giggling away. Honestly, people can't behave in these workshops. I don't do that. I don't promote that at all. Right, so what we've got to think about is how damaging it is. Try and switch your pattern at that moment. Look at the big mouth or small cocks. Well, who knows? Define big, define small. Size doesn't matter. Right, so we can really ruminate. So try and look at what's going on for you and switch your pattern. Look for facts, look for the responses, look for what was actually said and done. If somebody says you're fucking beautiful, then sometimes we just need to believe them. And that's really that's more complex than I'm just saying it. So look for the facts. Interrupt the pattern, do something else. Like if you're having a really strong response, like look at your type vagal nerve theory, polyvagal theory. You can do things like put your hands in freezing cold water, short, sharp shock, takes you out a bit. Try and do something different. There's quite a few methods that you can use, and we can go over those another day. Do something creative, draw, count to 10. People will write about that. Use the 4-7 breathing technique. Use the 5-4-3-2-1 method. If there are things you don't know, if we've got time at the end for those that want to stay, I will go through those if you want to. I also think it's a very dangerous time where people go into retroactive withdrawal of consent. That's a very dangerous thing, isn't it? Well, I regret that. That shouldn't have happened. So Dawn is saying I was thinking about that 10 or I was being facetious on purpose. Jessica, define mouth. I meant this one. Lola says, aftercare can be such a strange thing. Sometimes you don't even know that you'll need it. Everything seems fine, nothing extreme, and then it hits you. Yeah, that's, you like drop hits you even after like you've been to a concert or something. How would you know that you would want some care afterwards? I know someone who actually keeps a wee folder of screenshots from conversations that where people have given them compliments, said nice things. They go through it sometimes if they feel unlovable, ugly, unwanted. Yeah, so you know, you can have an envelope, you can have a video, you can have all sorts of things that can make you feel better. It might just be that you need to read a book. It can be all sorts of stuff. When you often lots of psychotherapy courses or counseling courses or listening skills courses all tend to do that and give envelopes to each other. Or they do the Johari window, things you see, things you don't see. There's lots of options that we can use around that. Bun Butt says, I personally have a kink journal where I essentially detail and dump every detail of my scenes into it. And that's how I move on and stay occupied. And it also allows me to gently make my brain adjust to real life again. I like that. That's cool. That works too. Retroactive reversal of consent must involve time travel. I wish it did, but you'll be amazed. I think people have got the right to say that didn't work for me, that went wrong. And if someone did something that you didn't negotiate, I think you've got a point. And it's also different. We might also want baby care. Listen, if you've got a screaming baby, they like to be held, they like to feel warm, they like to feel rocked, and they like to hear music, and they like to hear nice things. So you can recreate those things. You can wrap yourself up in a duvet, you can have blankets, you can have a little bit of lavender oil if you like that sort of thing that helps you feel more relaxed, unless of course you've got to get up for work. So we have to look at physical and psychological. Warm and damp socks, often even damp socks, yes, actually tend to make us warmer if you look at all the latest research into sleep. So we might like that. You might want a lavender cushion, you might want a hot water bottle, you might want something that makes you feel okay. Dance, move, sing and dance like nobody's watching. That can really help us. If you're with someone else, don't avoid eye contact. Eye contact really makes us feel better. It gives us a dopamine hit. And if you don't have somebody, like you can have dogs, you can have cats if you haven't got them. A fish doesn't quite do the same. It might. But stroking, if you've got animals, can really help. Our brains are incredible at creating new neural pathways. Our neuroplasticity is incredible. So, you know, a warm bath will help, some candles around it, a warm shower will help. Put your favorite clothes on, put their t-shirt on if you feel it's them that they're missing. Use their aftershave, use their perfume, use their deodorant. Have a connection with that human being, put that in place. It could be that they put a cream on their face. Oh, I'm flushing so much. I take a certain drug and it makes me flush, especially when I'm slightly warm, so I apologize because I've gone bright red. So we can do all sorts of things that help. So put your own favorite tracksuit on, put your own whatever on. This is all fluffy inside, so it's all warm. Also, paracetamol, when taken, has a slightly different name in America. I can't remember what it's called. Anchor, can't remember. And you can buy 500 in a go in America and other places. Over here, you can buy your 16 or however many or 32. That's it. But over there, you can buy absolutely hundreds of them. We know that paracetamol, if you're feeling pain, really helps, but it also helps with emotional pain. There's a lot of research on that. So if you don't feel so good, a cup of paracetamol can really help as well. You can also look at things like arnica. You can also look at things like chamomile if you believe in all of these things. Acetaminophen, yep, I can't even pronounce that, but yes, that's what it's called because I've got big tubs of it because I buy it every time I'm over there. So you can put your favorite program on. You can put like a child type program on that makes you feel really nice and warm and snuggly, anything that feels nice. Like I would without doubt be watching Encanto again and again and again, singing all the songs right now. Like I'm so into it, it's absolutely ridiculous. You could be that you can put some baking powder in your bath. You can put chamomile tea bags in your bath. They're all soothing. Vitamin E, like oil, you can treat yourself in different ways. Put their clothes on, as I said, use things like weighted blankets, do some colouring, do some knitting, do some sewing. Anything that uses these can really help. Please look at eating and drinking well. As I said, often we go for sugar, but sugar is inflammatory. It's not particularly helpful. I understand it helps in the immediacy to have a plan for this in aftercare. You want foods that increase serotonin and dopamine. Jesus, my memory isn't as good as it was. Cinders. 16 paracetamol from my experience. There is nothing to stop you from buying multiple packs from different stores, I know, but like these just come in a tip top. Anyway, salts. How do I feel about medical marijuana and THC for care or drop? I think that's an utterly personal thing. I have personally tried microdosing and I've tried different things and none of it works for me. All the latest research says that psilocybin and other things may have an impact on people's mental health, but we don't know how it's going to work, the after effects and everything else as well. So for some people, if you're feeling really down and you don't feel really well and you smoke a spliff, you might feel more paranoid, you might feel a shit ton worse. So no, absolutely not. So I think it's all about your care for yourself then and knowing yourself and knowing what works for you. That's what I think about that. I've also tried THC and I've tried drops and all sorts of things. And for me, they do absolutely nothing. That doesn't mean they won't do something for you. We all have to know our bodies and what works for us. So you want foods that increase serotonin and dopamine, as I said. So they are more your starchy foods. They are your whole wheat pasta. They are your potatoes, your cereals, your brown rice. We want to increase your tryptophans because tryptophans make us feel good. The research is very early, psilocybin, shrooms, and LSD and others. And it's very difficult to look at the placebo effects because when you take a low dose of a drug, it is going to impact you in some way, shape or form. So unless we give you another hallucinogenic, it's really hard to work that out. It's very early stages, very, very early, but we shall see. So as I was saying, so we want to try and increase your tryptophans. When you fall asleep at Christmas, or Thanksgiving in America, it's because you're eating turkey a lot of the time. It's very high in tryptophans. You're like, oh, you're right, yeah, I'm fine. Because you're watching Queen's Speech or, you know, should be going around for anything to do with Thanksgiving as well. So we want to try and increase tryptophans because they are the precursor for serotonin as well. So they make us feel better. So they're one of the building blocks. Root vegetables are really good. We also need tyrosine. Tyrosine can make us feel better as well. That's an amino acid, which also helps build. And you'll find that in dairy products. You'll find that in avocado. You'll find that in bananas, as was said earlier. You'll find that in pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds. So anyway, so what I'm saying is if all those sort of things can really help, and we've got things like vitamin B6 and omega-3s, plan your food for the next day. Bread is really good for you. I know you don't eat it because it's carbohydrates. Makes me fat. I really understand that. And bread is still really good for you. It's not a bad thing. We need whole grain cereals. We need some fish maybe. We need some salmon. We need leaves, green veg, preferably cold, actually, preferably raw as it goes if you want your omegas and different things. Try to avoid alcohol, try to avoid drugs afterwards. So that's interesting when we talk about that, because if the drop you feel afterwards is chemical, adding chemicals in doesn't allow you to look at the drop and what it is that you're feeling and how that works, because you add another chemical in. That's a bit like taking a blue pill for the red pills issue, which means you now have to take a mauve pill and now you need to take a green pill. And actually, not taking pills and working with food and working with other things can really help. Somebody mentioned journaling. Journaling can really help. So writing is better than typing. So writing uses these fingers, opposable thumbs. It's much better for our brains. It's why things like knitting, sewing, it's why it really helps. Even when people smoke, you know, especially if they roll, we do this all the way through and we say cigarette's really good for you. It's not, but the breathing aspect, and this is really good for you. So smoke without the cigarette. Do all of these things. Go outside, have a break, do some breathing. That can help as well. So we need to make sure that we can write or do something or share. We can share journals. Maybe the person we've been with can have a look at it. I always think if you're going to write a journal, especially post-play, please have the rule that there is no comeuppance for the post-play journal, because if the person will stop sharing with you. So if you say, well, why the fuck did you write that? That's really helpful. I'm never going to write that again, then am I? Fuck that. I'm just not doing it. So try and have a rule of no having a go at somebody for what they wrote or what they did. So journals are really good. Activity can be really good. Some people like to jog. Some people like to do something. You know, get all the adrenaline out. If it's been built up, you will have used some in that play session. If you've still got some left, do something. Be in nature, go for a walk, go and see something. My slaves journal daily, and it's always no comeuppance, always. Yeah, I really agree with that. There might be something that, hey, I want to talk to you about this. I want to discuss this further, please. Can I? And with respect, and that works. Rather than, fucking hell, like, it's got to be a no comeuppance. So it might be that you are active. You might need to shake like the Dulux dog. You might need to dance like nobody's watching. Something along those lines as well. With journaling and pictures as well, please make sure you have some kind of media policy between you. If someone has taken pictures, are you allowed to? Where do you put them? Listen, photos on this fucking thing. If I go over to America America, when I go into America, they can take my phone and look at every other fucking picture. Oh, my dad's texting me again, bless him. He always does it every time. Every time I'm here, I'm doing a workshop, there's a text, Michael Fields. Right, so these things can be taken from you and they can have a look at pictures and all sorts. That stuff, a lot of what we do can be prosecuted. We are not allowed to consent to violence against us. So if we have more than a trifling or transient mark in most states in the US and certainly in England and around a lot of Europe, not in always, I understand that the law's slightly different. So please make sure you have a proper media policy that protects you, that protects where pictures can go, and protects where you keep your own pictures and everything else as well. Because you might want to flick through some pictures afterwards. It makes you feel connected. What are you going to do with those pictures? How long do you keep them for? Where do they go? Please have a media policy. So as I said, you might have some activity and be really busy the next day. You might just want to go and see something or do something. You might go to a music concert. Doing fuck all is also an option, you know, just do nothing. That's okay too. Nothing, just nothing. Nothingness is a really good thing for some of us. Do you have a point afterwards where you want some kind of feedback or want some kind of discussion about what happened, what worked, what didn't? That's really important as well. And these are all parts of aftercare. I think I've covered most things. What do you think? Is there anything else you would add around aftercare in any way, shape or form? Have I missed anything for you? What are you thinking? If not, we'll go on to our next subject. So that was quite a lot. So I hope that people have got something on drop and on aftercare. I love a debrief personally, the opportunity to know the top had a good time and such, and both ways. No comeuppance for feelings, says Lance. Emotions ever. We are always responsible for our words or actions, but we can feel simply be a triggered response. Think Pavlov's dogs. It's even bigger than that. Pavlov's dogs would have had dogs and dogs and dogs even for the next 13 generations who would have still had a response to that bell. Epigenetics are really interesting, really boring. I love that. So debriefs can be really positive. They can be really good. I think people shouldn't have a comeuppance for feelings or emotions. I do think people should have a comeuppance if they behave like a twat. I think anger is an acceptable emotion. I think aggression is not. And that's the example I always use. You're entitled to your anger. You're not entitled to be aggressive. There's a big difference between those. And plus, I think we can help understand our own emotions and why they come up and what happens. And that's why you need to put them in private folder that only can be opened by biometrics for pics. Yeah. Jerry says, I think that was pretty comprehensive. Yes, quite helpful. Quite. Thank you for the interesting phrase there. Quite helpful. Bingo, says Karis. Right, so let's go on. Let's have a look about breakups. Let's have a look about how we meet somebody else on the scene and what happens. Excellent workshop, thanks. It's fine, I was only kidding. I don't take things personally. I really don't. I would take feedback. I mean, this is a workshop for free, so, you know. Look, relationships don't always work out. Relationships are shit sometimes. Love doesn't hold together a relationship. It doesn't work. I've just written about this. It doesn't matter whether you're kinky, polyamorous, monogamous. Relationships don't work out, right? That's what happens. It's part of what we do. Any form of kink or play is a form of relationship. Somebody you've been with or whatever, so is family, all of these things, even if it's for minutes. Lots of people want closure. When a relationship breaks up, it's like two people in a horse race. One person is deciding, or two people are deciding, or three, depends if we're polyamorous or ethically non-monogamous, but someone is deciding that maybe they don't want to be in this relationship anymore, and they drive forward to here, and this person is left here. They are owed the catch-up in some way, shape, or form. They need time to manage that catch-up. It makes a difference. We often want closure. I'm really sorry, America, but closure is such an American term, and do you know what? It's just such a heap of shit. You don't want closure. You want to say to that person, this is what you did to me, or this is what happened, and I want you to agree with me, and I want to make it better. That's what closure really asks for. I mean, fuck, you're never going to get that. If I say all this to you, you might come back to me. Really? Probably not. The person has made decisions, and maybe sometimes. But closure isn't all it's cracked up to be. You need to work on it. So I love it when Deb doesn't mince words. Oh, sorry, I'm not very therapeutic, am I? Sorry for any therapist who's never met me before. I'm not therapeutic, not here. This isn't therapy. Oh no, shit, this is how we're talking when I do therapy as well. This is me. So we've got to be really careful. Like, closure is such, it's a terrible word, because we're always looking for something. I want you to agree with me. I want to understand. And then the person tells you, and it's still not enough, because you want them to agree with you. And they can say, I'm sorry, I don't love you anymore. It didn't work out, and then we use fluffy words like I just don't, it's not the right time. Well, I'll wait for you then. Well, you fucked that up now, haven't you? Well, it's going to be 10 years. I don't care. I'll wait 10 years. Be honest, be direct, be straight. closure is because we often haven't been honest or direct or straight. So we often want to give someone else blame. We want to change things. Sarah, so informative. Thank you. Can you touch on dealing with exes that you're not on good terms with? Yeah, I'm coming into that, I promise. So what we're talking about here is planning is part of the structure. When I work with couples or poly families, one of the things we do, I do something called bronzes, silvers and golds. That's a whole different thing. However, when we've done our bronzes, silvers and golds, and we've looked at communication skills, and we've looked at ways of talking, and we've looked at what happens. I teach a lot of psychoeducation in that moment. What I then also do is, let's do your breakup, closure, whatever you want to call it, policy as well. And people go, are you fucking mental? No, I'm not. Especially in BDSM and especially in poly, because if you have taken over the responsibility of someone's orgasms, if you have controlled someone, if you do something where you choose their clothes every day. So if you have that sort of relationship, it's going to take time for someone to get okay around that. I have worked with people who don't know how to brush their hair. Of course they know how to brush their hair, but the psychological impact of them doing it was, yes, but that's what that person did, or doesn't know how to orgasm. Listen, all that stuff about, oh, they need therapy. No, they don't. Actually, that stuff would go over time by itself. Therapy just speeds that up for some people some of the time. So, Zoe says, I've never gotten closure and no, I don't seek it. It bothers me a little, but I get over it. I think we have to look at what is it inside. Can someone guide being in home as a sub, what things I can do to please my mistress? Is that a separate question to all of this? I'm really sorry, but if you want that sort of question, you can ask me afterwards and we will do it in the next workshop. I'm not coming off our topics because we've got 3 topics today. Sorry. I'm not sorry. That's what we're doing. So it's really important that we have to have a look at the contradictions about the questions we ask and where we go. If you are in that stage of grief and everything else as well, do yourself a favor, don't go to a fucking event. Don't go and see the person that's going to cause you that grief in that moment. Have conversations before. We get very possessive over events. Akira Mass, if you want to ask me that, send me something. I promise you, I will cover that next time. I mean, if you've got a mistress, the best thing to do is ask them. There you go, snap. Ask them. So I don't know what your mistress likes. So we can cover that, but it will always be ask them. So if we're trying to avoid all the feelings that we're having, actually what we need to do is get into them. So actually, sometimes I'm going to say, go to a fucking event as well, because then it helps us. No, I don't mean ask it here next time. If you want it covered in a workshop, send it to me in advance through FairLife. That's what I'm asking you to do if you want it covered. I have 1 topic for next week already. I have space for 2 more. So we need to really learn about our emotions, how not to be at the mercy of them. And if you want to not be at the mercy of your emotions, please go and have a good look at the TED Talk by Lisa Feldman Barrett, which is called You Aren't at the Mercy of Your Emotions. It is a great TED Talk. I mention it fairly often. Listen, abusers are around, abuse exists. We can get lost in our head saying, they did this, they did that, I did this, I did that, and we can feel very, very lost. Please go and get professional help. We need to grieve our emotions, and sometimes when we see the other person, it can really hurt us. I think very much, I'm sorry, prevention is better than cure here. Have an agreement about where do we go? What sex parties do we go to? What fetish parties? What clubs do we go to? What are we going to do if you're there and I'm there? How are we going to be? Thank you very much, Jerry. Tits up, I self-reflected until I made sense of things. I also vented to a mutual friend when I didn't get closure. Yeah, it's really good to have a good old vent. It helps. So, and time does help. Jessie, I had a very difficult break with a partner of 5 years at the start of the pandemic. And one of the things I learned from it is that no matter how hard you try to understand the what's and whys of the hows of all the little things that went wrong, you're never going to get more healing than hurt from it. We have to go through the hurt. This is going on a bear hunt. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You've got to go through it. Got to go through it. So we can't avoid it. We can't go somewhere else. We very much got to go through it. I love Tonkin's theory of grief, that if we have different experiences, that eventually the size of grief doesn't change, but then actually the buffer around it does. There are many theories around grief, and I'm not talking about death. I'm talking about the ending of a relationship, which also needs grieving. That's okay, Jerry. The other Jerry put it up there very sweetly. So time doesn't heal. It creates buffers, and it makes a difference. And loneliness hurts and it feels horrible because we've lost all those ideals. So when we then see that person, wherever they are, we then go, oh, fuck. Oh, right, that's not good. I've lost everything. I don't feel good. So let's have a look at some tips that you can actually do. Again, pre-mortem. Honestly, pre-mortem the fuck out of this one. I'm going to LAM. I'm going to see that person. What does that mean? London Alternative Market, because I'm there. So that's the one I'd always use. In walks my ex. Well, let's fucking plan for a little bit. When you plan something in your brain feels better because it has a pathway of where it's going to go. If you say, whatever, it'll be fine. It might be fine, but will you be? It is fine. Like, time will go on. It's no difference. Will you be okay though? And what do you need? So have a plan, have an idea, go with a friend, meet some friends there. If you don't know anybody there, go to a talk that's for newbies, fill it up with workshops, go to stalls and talk to people, get to know people, have conversations and plan. They might not even fucking walk in. That's what makes me laugh sometimes. And also plan for that, because the expectation can really hurt us. Oh my God, they're going to be there. It's going to be absolutely awful. Fuck, what will I do? So a couple of years ago, I was doing a talk at London Fetish Weekend. I'm as bald as a fucking coot. I really don't look my best. I'm in the middle of chemo. I'm really not feeling that well. And I walk into a workshop, and right in the front, there are two people saying, Jerry, I don't know if you remember this because I think you were there. And a few other people were as well. There is my ex sitting right there with a woman in my fucking workshop. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Hi, how are you? Says I. I'm fine. I said, oh, I heard you had a heart attack or something. No, it wasn't that. I had a panic attack and got the heart attack wrong. See, I'm being kind of facetious and not very nice now, right? So he was okay. Thank you, Deborah, for hosting. I'm going to pick up my baby. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. So I felt very uncomfortable. And I said, oh, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, I'm with so-and-so. I can't remember the person's name. I'm really sorry. We're going to see the kink shrink. And I went, I am the king shrink. You know this. What are you doing here? And he went, oh God, yeah, you changed your name, didn't you, about 5 years ago or whatever, because I was adorable or Deb adorable before. And it was like, yeah, no, I did, because I've now changed my personal profile and I've got a professional profile as well. And he went, oh, okay. And then I walked through to the bar at the other end, probably looking for something to steal that's copper. That would be my normal thing. Like, what can I nick from the bar today? Because it's all copper and I have a lot of copper in my house. That's a joke, by the way. Unless you're Poppy and Simon, and they'll know what I mean. So, right. So, and then I came back through and he's gone and she's still there. Right. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? This is really weird. I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And then I was talking in a workshop and they're all open questions there. So you can ask anything you, for legal reasons, this is a joke. Right, so I feel really uncomfortable, and I brought up we were talking about panic attacks and anxiety, and I brought up my own experience of actually my ex was just sitting there and I had quite an interesting visceral response, and I went through what happened and whatever else as well. And then she kept talking quite a lot and was saying stuff, and she came up and she said to me afterwards, she went, I'm really sorry, you're uncomfortable. This was our first date and it was my idea to come and see you. Why would you take a first date to go and see to their ex? It made me giggle a little bit. I heard you asking about the copper cauldron in the kitchen. I know, he's going to get me one. And they're only a tenner. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So I felt, and she said, oh, I'm a psychologist. And I've heard about you for ages and I really wanted to come and see you. And I went, mad first date. She went, oh, to be honest, I'm really glad you got me out of it because he left and I don't think I'll see him again. And I went, doesn't say much for my taste, does it? And it was really interesting that the discomfort, because I thought, Jesus, after 10 years, I'm very unlikely to bump into him. But it turns out we were actually polyamorous and he asked me to marry him. And he was also with someone else. And I said, no. And his response to that was, well, if you won't marry me, she will. So I was like, okay. And it didn't go so well after that. You'd be surprised to hear. And so I thought, oh, I probably won't see this person again because they're very happily married. I didn't always approve of my metamor. Some of her behavior was quite difficult, shall we say. And actually, it turns out she ended up cheating on him. So he was looking around again. So he did, and I thought, oh my God, like it was really, I hadn't planned for it because it was 10 years down the line. So it's never easy seeing your partner, ex-partner in public or partners. The key is to try and stay calm, breathe. I know that they've hurt you. I know that something awful's happened. The worst thing you can do is lash out, attack, or start bitching or say anything. That only ever comes back on you. take a really deep breath, breathe out even longer than you breathed in, and walk away and go and find someone. Go and get a bucket of ice, put your fingers in it, go and drink something, preferably non-alcoholic. Go and drink a large glass of water, walk away. Calm is your best friend in this moment. I'm not saying that's easy to do, because you will have a rush of emotions that will be absolutely shocking. We don't want to show pain because it will backfire on us. We can be hurt and say, wow, this is really hurting me. Calm is really important. And that takes some confidence, doesn't it? That's quite difficult if you're not very good at confidence. If they come up to you and say hello and they do something, keep it short and brief. Hi, nice to see you. Really sorry, I'm just in the middle of something. I just promised someone I'd meet them. Wish you well, gotta go. Pre-mortem and practice the phrase that you have. How do you stay calm? I avoided an event last year. It wasn't an ex-partner, but I knew I wouldn't have been my best behaved self. If you know that, plan for being your best behaved self. How can you do that? Because you are an adult. You are responsible for your feelings. You can control them. If you can't, you need to go and see someone. Seriously, if you cannot control your responses and emotions, we've got to learn how to. It's a learned process. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it takes time. I'm going to do a quick plug for LAM, since you keep mentioning it. First Sunday of every month in London, see LondonAlternativeMarket.com, and fourth Sunday of every month, including this Sunday in Manchester, see lamchester.com. Come and say hello if you're local. Come and say hello to me if you come along. It's not easy to stay calm. However, we have to practice calming exercises. So again, if I'm going to run over, because I always do, however, if you want to stay for a bit, I can teach you a few of those exercises. It's up to you. Keep it short, keep it polite, keep it simple. It's really hard when you're mad with someone and you really hate them and they've been a complete and utter cunt. You just need to go, hi, hello, and just leave it. Listen, your heart's going to thump. Fingers in ice or fresh air is a great tip to distract your senses when you become triggered by emotions. Exactly. So again, vagal, polyvagal, like we're talking nerves here, can really help us. Feet on the floor, glass of water, nice and cold, gulp it down. Anything can help you. A little bit of a temperature shock can really help. If your best friend's with you, get them to hold a piece of ice on the back of your fucking neck. Hi, nice to see you. Gotta go. Sorry. It doesn't matter really. Just be as casual as you can. I would like to query this a bit. Maybe if it's a proper breakup, but if someone, for example, disappeared, then isn't it fair to be blunt and snarky? If you think that will help you, then maybe. However, I can guarantee long term it won't help you. When we're blown, I think you can think it's really acceptable to go up and say, hi, you disappeared on me. Explanation? Don't have to be snarky, just say it. You disappeared. I think you have no idea the impact of that. I'm really upset right now. And I would absolutely really say that quite publicly. Ah, Jerry, gosh, we played, we had sex, and you completely disappeared and you haven't spoken to me for 3 months. What did I do wrong? That's always a good one, because they like,
we did not, for the people, for the benefit of anyone watching, we did not.
Great friends. It's powerful to be calm in those moments. Zoe, same, Deb, same, says Domina. I've managed to control emotions and outburst previous. I put the work in since the concussion is kind of like it went out the window. When we have any form of brain injury, that makes really different things. It's really clever to say sorry, right? It's really clever to say sorry. Jerry, I'm so sorry. Sorry? What? I haven't seen you in ages. No, I'm really sorry. And just keep saying it. Why? No, seriously, I must have to apologize. Why? Well, because you walked out. I'm really sorry. Something clearly went wrong. What happened? It's a really good way to draw people in. It's a little bit manipulative. It's also very effective. A month after my slip, says Katie Blue, with my ex, turned up at my family's event. I would take that too. I felt sick and peeved, but just said, I don't have to like them being there. I'm an adult and I'm capable of walking away, which I did. I think it's also okay to say to family, to be very clear, look, I feel really uncomfortable if this person turns up here. My youngest daughter just broke up with someone and she said, I would like some space and some respect for a little while. Please, don't turn up at work. 5 days later, he turned up at her work. And she just went over to him and said, I feel like I'm having a panic attack right now. Clearly, you didn't mean to do that to me. I love my daughter. She's quite good at this. Clearly, you didn't mean to cause that for me because you wouldn't want me to go through that. Because you're a decent human being. Fucking brilliant, Erin. Well done. You are awesome. That's what she did. And she said, I'm sure you didn't mean to put me in this position. So somehow you've misunderstood what I said. When I said I want a break, I want a break. And please, could you leave? I love my daughter. It's a good one. So, Charlotte says, when I knew I was going to see an ex for the first time, I'd made sure to plan with my long-time play partner and be clear that I didn't wish to engage with that person. It really helped that my play partner was on board, because the moment I slipped away from it, the ex descended on my play partner. My play partner ended the conversation and walked away the moment he spotted me returning. I did ignore the ex's hello and goodbye, which made him immature. Look, it's okay not to engage. Is it cleverer in a way? Is it more impactful to say, hi, I'm okay, fuck you, underneath all of that? Yes, it can be really helpful. And sometimes people are just really horrible. They have no idea how to break up. They have no idea how to be decent. Personally, I would say no. Says Cinders, my last Dom ghosted me. That has cropped up every now and again. Every time he asks, how are you? And my reply is always, oh, fine, thanks. I focus on myself since you ghosted me. Do you know what, as well? After a while, Cinders, if someone zombies you, so when someone ghosts, they come back from the dead and they zombie you, I would think it's really okay to say, oh my God, what hospital were you in? Are you okay? Because a decent person would have communicated that in some way, shape or form. And in the end, if you don't want to play those games, block, delete, block, block, block. Don't engage, it hurts. Lance, time and place for everything. Can we meet up for a coffee later? There's a few things I'd like to talk about, otherwise right now is not good. If you can recognise that the encounter at the event is going to cause you to spiral, not something I excel in by any means, but working on it. Yes, again, have a plan in your head about how you want to do it. It's okay to be immature if it makes you feel better. It depends on who's around you and who's going to judge you and what's going to be said. It's the scene. If people hear horrible things, oh my God, people can really be horrible about people on the scene. Things escalate. You know, you said, I don't want to talk to you. I don't think your behavior's been very nice. And all of a sudden you've told them to fuck off, they're a cunt and they're an abuser. Like, how did that happen in that Chinese whispers factory? It's beyond me. CW, I tried being pleasant. The ex was really hurtful and snubbing my telling me he was busy. Yes, I really like good comebacks, just clever comebacks. It depends how you want to play it. So I would think if you know your ex and you really want a good comeback, try and think of a few that you can use. And you sometimes have to think of ways to change the situation. I remember being at a party with a bunch of 16-year-olds once, and my eldest daughter's 16th birthday, and these kids were all 16, and there's this lad, Dom his name was, and he's about 6'2", and they'd gone into the pub, into the toilets, and this was a room attached to a pub. It had old-fashioned Skittles in it. We had a disco, DJ, Skittles, everything. It's quite a cool party, but they weren't allowed in the pub. And they went into the loo, and I opened the door to Lou, and he said, Deb, you can't come in here. And I said, well, why are you in here? You're not allowed in here either. And he went, and he leant up against the condom machine, wanker, 16, wanker. He said, I just need some change for one of these. And I said, I'll lend you the change when your dick's big enough to fit in one. Now get back in the room. Always have a good comeback up your sleeve. It can feel really nice, but that takes a bit of practice. Go and do some comedy, go and do some improvisation. It really helps. I felt quite smug. He did laugh in the end. He's 6'2". I didn't want him to get angry. The continued ghost and zombie and acting like nothing's happened is definitely a thing. Oh, it's completely a thing. If you look at the latest research and the research that is done, on average, somewhere between 72 to 78% of people are ghosted. However, what's interesting is something like over 80% of people say they would never ghost anyone. Well, someone's a fucking liar somewhere, aren't they? So, you know, that's a bit like the lying statistics, isn't it? I hate being lied to. I would never lie to anyone, and the statistics are around 99%. And then 97% of people say they'd lie to someone else. Well, only 2% of us are fucking decent then, aren't we? So, like, it's really interesting. It doesn't matter, does it? Have something up your sleeve. Oh, yes, I have thought of that, but really, he's not worth my energy. I just block him. I agree. Game of whack-on. Just block. Block is much better. But have a plan. When you meet someone and they're there, what your head's going to do is probably spiral into all those things that happen between you. Some of it might be rose-tinted. 90% of people claim to have an above average sense of humor. Do you know what? If you look at the research around therapists, I can't remember what the figure is. It's 92 or 98. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm really sorry. We tell you that we are some of the best therapists around. Well, we can't all be that way, can we? That just makes me laugh. I'm above average. Well, 92% of people can't be above average. Look, it happened at my first lamb. I went trying to do something for myself soon after we'd broken up and mentioned if anyone wanted to join me. No one replied, so I thought I'd be fine. Yeah, that's a difficult one. And you know what, Luke, we know you. Whenever you're there, come and find us. That's what I would always say now that you do know us. You know, like, that's something different as well, especially being out of London. Then they turn up with the other guy being very lovely and mutual, at the time friend. It was a complete surprise. I had to go in complete avoid mode and just keep quiet. I made the best out of it and tried to just enjoy the day. I couldn't even approach the friend as it was an awkward situation itself when they took sides. Do you know what? I really love that you made the best out of the day. That's part of the point, isn't it? Look, I'm not going to waste my day. I'm not going to waste my day on old emotions and old feelings, because what we tend to do is we drop into the past. We can get bitter and negative and we can attack. And also, we can also have rose-tinted spectacles. Your brain is very clever when you are hurting. It tries to make you feel better. So when it tries to make you feel better, it reminds you of memories. Guess what your latest memories are about and with? Fucking them. That doesn't help you at all. So what I always say to people is, especially if you're in that rose-tinted thing, is imagine this is a film. Don't forget to look on the floor in the cutting room, because believe me, you've cut out a lot of shit. Look for the reality about how the person was and how they weren't great and all of those things. But also, if you're having a very negative, bitter time, also remember some of the nice things that you did together. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been with them. Try and be in the middle somewhere. So avoiding the past is quite difficult. If you need to, just avoid them completely. Go somewhere else, especially if a place has quite a few rooms. This is really difficult when it gets to play and sex. If you are in a building and they are actively playing or actively having sex, you are probably going to compare and you're probably going to get hurt. Really, the best thing I can tell you to do in that moment is go away with a friend and walk away, especially if you're seeing active sex scenes or active play scenes. When we see active play scenes, it just reminds us of everything we've lost, or maybe that we get very angry. They're dangerous. They shouldn't fucking be doing that. They shouldn't be doing this. Because again, it's very intense because it's about play and sex, then we have a very strong visceral response. Don't go and play as a form of competition. That will just damage you beyond belief. That is not a healthy thing to do. Well, fine, if you're fucking them, I'm going to fuck these 3. They're doing 5, well, I'm going to do 10. Like, that's not helpful. And actually, you're not doing it through free will and choice. You're not consenting. And the person you're having sex or play with isn't consenting to that either, because they don't know that you're doing that as a form of retribution. That is an unhealthy package. The best thing you can do is walk away. Take a breath, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 7, walk away. Friends who take sides are not friends. I'm really glad you made the most of the day. I get that, Zoe. And Dominic says, I'm mindful, I definitely have a below average sense of humour. I'm an above average amount of self-awareness. Are you though? See, this is what I mean. It makes me laugh, doesn't it? Of course we are. We're all above average. We couldn't live if we didn't think that to a certain extent. We need that. So acting like an adult is really hard. Controlling your emotions. This one is a fucking choice for me. Listen, if you have something going on for you, seeing your ex can take you to a place where you don't want to be. It's going to bring up emotions. If you are having emotions that makes, for example, makes you feel anxious, sad, useless, pathetic, I think it's okay to leave knowing you're sad. It's okay to name those emotions and go away, because it's not going to help you. Because actually, if you can do this, you can probably do anything. We can survive stuff. We're incredible human beings. We really can. So it's really worth making sure that you name your emotions and have one ex keeps putting me down, tries to look at me whenever we're in the same place, and I internally laugh at them while wondering why they're doing it. I hold off being loud and calling them out on it. I don't want to engage, but the temptation is great. I think if you have that going on, you can also say to somebody, listen, I've noticed this. Is there an unresolved problem between us? If you can have a civil conversation. If you can't, you can't. Any advice an ex you're on bad terms with and have no contact with unexpectedly turns up at a small munch where you don't know any other people. It's not possible to ignore them or go to another room. It's always possible to leave, Sarah. And actually, although that can make us feel weak and it can make us feel that that's not fair, that's the reality of it. Or you go up to the munch organizer and say, I don't feel very safe. I don't feel very comfortable. Safe is a big word. I don't feel very comfortable. My ex has walked in. Please, could I sit with you? Please, could you talk to me? Could you maybe think of somebody that I could sit with and talk to? You can ask for help and you can ask for support, and or you can leave. Especially when things are vitriolic. You can also sometimes try and contact the ex and say, please, can we sort this through? But sometimes that just isn't possible. It isn't. So if you have no contact and they unexpectedly turn up, ask for support actively from the person who's organising the munch and or leave. And then ask the munch coordinator. I think with munches as well, if you're on somewhere like FetLife, it's really worth checking out the who's going list. Is someone going to be there? Plan for it. What can you do? So he says, I had an ex-play partner who did that. I did a rope corset, which we discussed on someone else, and it just went badly and dropped. I only did it because I was doing rope at the event. He had her parade around it in front of me. I felt sorry for her. I think she clicked that he only did it to try and bug me. I didn't, because it was so badly done. Yeah, and that can make us try and find comedy can help. I like to go to munches, says Sarah, to meet people, but possibly might have been there prevents me. Okay, let me ask you a challenging question. Why let that person have the same amount of power over you that they did then? The way to feel okay is to take some of your power back. And that's by going. And the more we expose ourselves, sometimes actually can be really helpful, realizing that there won't be any damage. Because what anxiety does, or that sort of stress about this will happen, we end up in this predictor pattern of pattern predictor. It will go badly. This will happen. I will feel terrible. But actually, the more used to it we get, the better off we start to feel. And then we start to make a few friends at local munches. And then we've got a few friends that we've made. Now we feel better. We can refocus. Sometimes that can help too. I don't want someone to have power over me that I don't consent to. If I can't go somewhere because of somebody else, I'm giving someone else power. I don't want that for myself. I don't know how you feel about that, Sarah. And it might be worth you speaking to someone like a life coach, a therapist, or a BDSM scene type therapist and coach, because there are loads of them around to say, help me. Cass, thanks, Deb. You're helping a great deal. Thank you. I'm glad. Great advice, Debs. Organisers are usually really helpful with stuff like that. They are, Dom, and I agree. Sarah, speaking to a munch organiser is a great tip. Thanks, you're welcome. And Sarah, Lola, that's a great piece of advice. Go to a bigger one as well, a large one. But it depends where you live and what you've got around you. And that makes a big difference too. So I think it's all about planning. It's all about making yourself feel sure about how you're just going to nail this. Should I be here? That's one of the first questions. If you want to be there, it then becomes... And Mr. O talks about his negotiations about opt-in and opt-out and different things. And I really like some of the things he writes. And one of the things he wrote about is when you change things, it's not going to change my decision to play with you. It might change my decision on how. If you make a decision about going, make the decision about going, but it might be that you are slightly different when you're there. Own your decision and go for it. It's really helpful. Remember why you're going. You're going to make friends, talk to people, make friends. Be very adult as you can about it. And honestly, also, if you really want to do something, wear something that they fucking loved you in. Listen, if you want to ramp that game up too, especially at fetish events, if they loved you in something. So he says to Sarah, as much as it will make you feel uncomfortable to start with, please still go. I've been in this situation. I made friends with others as I attend the scene, and he doesn't go to events. I do, as he knows. I'm not scared or uncomfortable about him anymore, type of thing. Yeah, well, he thinks I still feel uncomfortable. I don't trust him and I don't feel safe. But me going showed him I was in charge of myself and I won't be bullied. Yeah, it's really important to find your strength. Find your strength. Find that person inside you. And please, some people say have a few drinks to make you feel stronger. Don't fucking do that. Look, honestly, I understand that a few drinks can make you feel good, but there's something called the New York bar rule that came out way before we had drinks that were cheap. And when you had the man, because it was always a man, going into the bar in the 1960s, thanks and good night, New Queuing. See you later. Sorry, I am slightly going over. I still am going to come on to, is it dronification we're doing at the end? Yeah, I think we are, aren't we? So it's really important that you don't drink, because if you have a couple of drinks, that could be 2 to 4 units depending on the drink that you're having. When you drink a certain amount of units, the consequence of them hitting you takes 5 minutes roughly to hit your system, but an hour and 10 for the first unit to leave your system, and an hour for each unit afterwards. When you start drinking and all of a sudden you have a few more, that's when things are just going to get out of hand and get messy, and all the emotions come up. Because what drinking does, it doesn't make you feel stronger, it just smashes away your inhibitions. But when you smash away someone's inhibitions, it also allows all their emotions to come up. It's not going to be a good look. I would say don't drink. I understand that some people do say drink. That is not for me. That's not something I would recommend ever. It's not going to make you feel any good. Okay, any more comments on about seeing exes? Anyone want to add anything? Lance, conversely, I've given up power because I knew my presence would cause potential issues. I admire that. You know that you're going to make a difference to somebody else and it would hurt someone, so I'm not going to do that. So while not healthy for me to avoid the event, I knew at the time the two of us in the same space was potentially bad. Discretion was the better part of honor, blah, blah. She told me not to avoid, but I also had to acknowledge how it may have affected myself. When we feel responsible for someone and we feel that we have an influence, and that's different, I think it's okay to take some time. I think it's also important that you do go back. Eventually, like when the time is ready, when a bit of time has passed, maybe for both of you, it's very important to claim our space in the world. You know, that's my space, that's my munch. Like with Erin, with this guy, John, coming to her place where she worked, she was like, when you think about it, these are my fucking friends. I introduced you to them. This is my area. Don't encroach on my space. It's a free world. You're welcome here when I'm ready as well. And actually, all of her friends said, fuck off, John, go home, like inappropriate. That can happen as well. Cinders, alcohol is a depressant, so it might not help on that level either. Alcohol is a very serious depressant. If you look at some really interesting research on alcohol and you compare it to other drugs, because it is a drug, it's a drug called ethanol. If you actually look at the side effects of ethanol long term, you'd probably be better off taking some fucking heroin or something like. It's a serious drug when we seriously take too much of it, and it really impacts our capacity to look after ourselves. Okay. Anything else that anyone wants to say about anything or add to that? Alcohol doesn't seem to make me any smarter. The adverts were lying. Do you know what's really shocking as well? It also doesn't hydrate you. That, like, when we do this, like, it's not hydrating. It doesn't help you at all. In fact, for every one of these you drink of alcohol, you need 3 of them to make up for the hydration. I'm not drinking alcohol, by the way. Right, so let's talk about something that's fairly new on the market a little bit, dronification. It's not that new, so I appreciate I'm going over time. So if you want to leave, I totally appreciate that you might want to go. Actually, you might also be here for this. Yeah, and cooking it off in the stews doesn't help either. Well, I don't know. I do love a cheese fondue with a large bottle of wine in it. That's another story. Yeah, but we do have to be careful. So let's talk a little bit about dronification, because I feel like we've done Exes quite a lot there. There's lots of things that we can use. It's the planning of it, it's the preparation, it's being adult, it's accepting your own feelings, it's understanding that they're going to come up and planning for the things that we can do around them, asking for help, talking to people, having friends makes a real difference, and making friends makes a real difference. I think I'm more worried now in case I bump into them, though. Also go to events I wouldn't have before. I feel better in myself and do have friends to keep safe now if it does happen. I think as well, Luke, what you could say is, what are you worried about? Because sometimes we worry for the sake of worrying. So, like, for example, when people are very frightened of flying, they might be very frightened that the plane's going to fall out of the sky and they're going to die. But actually, when you truly work with them, what a lot of them are most frightened with is, I'm going to have a fucking panic attack in a really small box and I can't get out of the box. So sometimes we need to understand what's going on underneath for a lot of people, rather than the stuff that's on the top or the stuff that they present. We have layers, emotions. We have a physiological response to something which starts an emotion. We then turn around and think that that emotion is set in stone. It is not. It is part of our patterns, predictors, as I say, look at that TED talk. Then we get a little bit lost in it, because then we worry about the sake of worrying, because now we're worrying. And then we get really lost in that thought pattern, which really doesn't help us. Really, why are you worried? That's not for you to say here. I'm asking you to have a look at that yourself. What is it I'm worried about? And then Socrates question can really help with that. See that through to the end. What do you think is going to happen? So see it through till the time you get home. See it through to the time you've done something else. What is going to happen that's so awful? Well, I'm going to feel shit. What, forever? For how long? What do you mean you're going to feel shit? What does that mean? See it through. Socrates question is, and then what? And then what? And then what? And then what? And guess what? At the end of and then what? We're either dead or we're alive and fine. It's kind of one of those things, like, we very rarely are anything anywhere in the middle. And we're normally, and we can find little hooks that we're worried about along that when we're doing that Socrates questioning to see what is it actually that we are feeling here and what's going on. And then we can talk about our fears and what it means. Oh, I'm so bright red. Can't wait to see this video. I never watch myself afterwards. My person is a vulnerable narcissist and a therapist. They are excellent at being a victim. They have an excellent command of language. I'm so scared to see them for what role they will play and what they will say to others. They'll say things, I'm not safe near them. They are trying to elicit a certain response from other participants. Jane, what I'm going to say to you, honestly, is the truth always out. When someone is like that, they always out themselves at some point. So what the key here is for you to behave consistently and steadily and okayly. That's a really bad word, but you know what I mean. Because everybody, anyone who is like that, will eventually out themselves. They will. I don't know if I have a little bit of a problem with the word narcissist, in that unless someone is diagnosed, they might have narcissistic behavior. They're not a narcissist. I think therapists, to the physician heal thyself. Look, a lot of people come into therapy because they haven't dealt with their problems. They want to be a therapist. They fix other people's problems instead of themselves. We talk about wounded healers and we talk about everything else as well. And they might be manipulative, but they always out themselves at some point. If somebody is like that, you will find out, others will find out. And then as you stay steady, you'll watch the others come back to you. I promise you that. That isn't even a potential. That isn't a guarantee. Cinders, I'm back. One of the cats fell asleep on the modem and switched it off. I'm really sorry, but I love that. That's a really cool reason. What's your problem? My cat fell asleep on my modem. I mean, that's one. I mean, that's a good. It's better than my dog ate my homework, isn't it? Nowadays, why aren't you in the meeting? My cat was on my modem. Fuck off. I like that. I'm glad it's helpful, Jane. It's a different insight. I promise you that person will out themselves. No, please don't apologize. Please, I'm really sorry if that came across as derisory. I use terminology to give you an idea. Yes, I totally understand. Who use modems these days? All right, Jerry, a bit brutal. So, Jane, I would honestly say to you, consistent, steady, calm, as much as you can. Say, gosh, is that what you heard about me? Look, there are people here and there are people I know who have a lot of things said about them, and I'm sure things get said about me. What I'm always going to do is, this is me, this is who you see, make your own mind up. And eventually that's what people will do. People will come and talk to you because they might be curious because of what he said or what she said or what they've said. I don't think I caught a gender, and it doesn't matter anyway. What matters is that people will make their own minds up, but we build this thing up in our heads. Charlotte, I was worried because the person I ended things with was due to a display of aggression. I wasn't sure I would keep my mouth shut and whether they'd come back on me after the event in the form of confrontation, but planned around it by going for a meal with my play partner. Good, I'm glad. And yes, I did say to my play partner, I like to give people enough rope to hang themselves. It's a really good thing. Like, it's a really good thing to learn to do, to stay calm, because people will out themselves. I think when you're genuinely frightened and you're frightened about aggression or violence, that's a different thing. And I think we have to make sure we're protected, or we have friends, or we make sure that we're safe. We walk home with someone, we make sure that our places are locked, and we have to be very careful. A lot of people threaten and say stuff and they don't see it through. And of course, some people do see it through. So please make sure that you are safe. Safety really matters. People are being sarcastic to you, Jerry, now. It's still a modem. Okay, let's talk about dronification. I was asked to talk about dronification. What is it and how does it work? I think it's something that's come up quite a lot in the last couple of years. It isn't for everybody. So dronification is basically, it has had a massive uptake and a massive increase recently. So what is it? Anyone know what it is? Anyone heard of it before? Some people have, some people haven't. So what is dronification? Dronification is when we take another human being, is attaching propellers to people. Dominic keen to learn. Yeah, we put them around their neck. No, we don't. We don't. Take everything I say with a pinch of salt because I'm full of shit half the time. Right, so what we're trying to do is turn this person into a drone. Yes, so robot will do. But a non-thinking, could be for pleasure, could be for just service, could be for anything. Excellent, tell me how. Well, this is where it gets a little more complex. So what we're after is we're trying to make someone an automated response, like without feeling and without too much thought. What we try and do as well, it's really big in the rubber game scene. It's huge, isn't it? It's really going somewhere. And I really understand that feeling of disappearing. The reason, part of what we're trying to do is take their body away. So the way of taking their body away, Charlotte, thank you very much. You're really welcome. Dominic, right, you ain't staying with me again, scared. Right, so what we do is, what dronification does is often people tend to wear latex. They're covered in latex and covered in a hood. So what they're trying to do is to take away your personal identity. So it's a form of objectification. So we're going to cover you with latex, cover you with a hood, your feet, heels, maybe, whatever, and you're probably going to have a hood on of some kind. There might be a mask with a shape on the front. It could be a gas type mask. It can be a real variety. But what we're trying to do is make you one of 8 sort of thing. If you don't know Star Trek, nobody would get that because it's kidding, it's 1 of 7. Right, so what we're trying to do is make somebody into something they're not. Part of an entity, part of a group, part of something else where they're not anywhere. And people do talk about, when they write about it, they talk about the Borg, somehow that they are mindless, just in one place, and this is what they're thinking about, and it's just about you. So we're trying to take away someone's free thought. So we've got a cyber aspect going on here with lots and lots of latex. So what they also use, and it might be that somebody might have, people used to use different things actually when it first started, as it goes. They didn't just use latex. Now, yeah, it is a bit like Stepford Wives, but there's no identity in the covering. So if you look at pictures of anyone who's a drone, what you'll find is they might have a kitty cat thing, they might have a plane thing, but they'll be utterly covered in latex, top to bottom. So there's no visual aspect of a human being there. The thing that makes dronification different as well is what a lot of people then do is it's mixed with hypnosis. Anyone who knows me, is it being done to someone else, not something you do to yourself? It's very difficult to take your own mind away at any one time. It's often mixed with hypnosis. So there are loads of people into this. So you've got an aesthetically pleasing look mixed with an objectification covered in latex, and we're using some form of hypnosis or erotic hypnosis. So it'd be very difficult to do that to yourself. So it's basically they're complete and utter servants. You can also play games around being a drone. So there are actual online games, hex, different things. There are different things that you can look at that. So where people are into it. Isn't there one called Hex Core or something? I don't know properly. I'm sorry, but I think there is a Hex Core that you can actually join. Blue, I think that's, I'm sorry I have to leave, but thanks really, you're really welcome. If you want to go, please go. I understand that I've gone over and I apologize. But it's all about objectification, really. We're just trying to make people to take away their identity in some way, shape or form. And it involves often, for a lot of people, erotic hypnosis or some form of hypnosis. Look, my experience of hypnosis, when it's used psychotherapeutically, it can be really beneficial. The person is fully trained, right? There's a difference between a trained hypnotherapist and somebody who hypnotizes for erotic situations. Anyone can be put into a state of being. In theory, it should be a qualified person guiding you in some way, shape or form as you really relax and you just let go. It's all about relaxation. I have a lot of issues, personally, people know this, with hypnosis when it's used on the scene, because sometimes it's used for very bad reasons. When you look at a lot of assaults that happen statistically, quite a few of them involve some form of hypnosis. Now, I'm curious about that. The research is not there and it hasn't been done. So I would love for that research to be done. Hypnosis can be fucking wonderful. It can help with coping abilities. It can help with pain management. It can help with all sorts of things. There are lots of things some of the things we don't know how it works and why it works for some people, but we know it can help with pain. We can know it can help, not particularly proven with quitting smoking. There's some proof. There is proof around chronic pain. There is some proof around irritable bowel syndrome. There's some proof around weight loss. Because people are very in an arousing state. When we're highly focused, we are more likely to listen to suggestions. We're more likely to respond. So dronification tries to use hypnosis to take away some of the person's responses and personality erotically. However, is hypnosis always safe? That's interesting. It depends on whose fucking hands it's in. So do your research on the person who's doing it to you. Ask around, ask for some, please, we should be doing this anyway to a certain extent. Turn around and say, have you got 3 or 4 other people that you've hypnotized that I can talk to, please? Do you have like people I can actually have a conversation with? Because if you are really prone to hypnosis, it's really dangerous. It can be. So please, like anything, it's the same if someone's got a fucking flogger, right? If they don't know what they're doing, they can cause you a lot of damage. Ask, find out. However, I'm going to go one step further with hypnosis. If someone's got a flogger, I can turn around and say, fuck off, don't do that, unless I'm severely tied up. So, but hypnosis, if you're in a highly suggestible state, that's not so great. So there's a danger with a person who's using it. I understand I'm a little anti-hypnosis if it's in the wrong hands. So I understand that's a prejudice where I'm coming from right now. The risk and dangers of hypnosis that some people can have, we can actually, I personally, you shouldn't really use it on people who have psychotic symptoms, if they have delusions, if they're stuck in their own mind or hallucinations, or if somebody is really stuck in a drug and alcohol pattern. That's something very different as well. We can also have basic adverse reactions to hypnosis as well. So we can end up with headaches. We can end up feeling drowsy. We can have false memories created potentially. People say that's not possible, but the more we say something, more it can get into someone. Not always. I'm not saying Every hypnotherapist does this, right? I'm saying in the wrong hands with the wrong person. However, hypnotherapy itself can cause anxiety and distress. Like, what happened? I wasn't here. I couldn't control myself. I don't like that. So we can have interesting reactions to anything. You could say the same about generalized therapy as well. So please talk to somebody. We can't make someone do something that they don't really want to do against their will, but we can potentially put someone in a state where they don't have as much control, because it changes our inhibitions. Lance, hypno has been a personal fetish since before I was old enough to know what a fetish was. I've been studying erotic hypnotherapy, and while I want to add my repertoire, I'm far from comfortable with my own knowledge and skills to implement. I think you have to get seriously qualified if you really want to do it. That's what I think, rather than just play about with it. False memories can be, that's why I just said it. False memories can be, with any therapy, I agree with you, Mark, can be made without any hypnosis, but hypnosis makes it easier because we're in a more suggestible state. So if somebody says, like, you know, we turn it all of a sudden, we're saying you're a drone or something else as well, and you really want me. Do I? I'm not like, and like, we can just add things. So please just be careful. Please be careful. So dronification is a mixture of depersonalization, objectification, and it mixes in a total loss of humanness because they're absolutely covered. Sometimes rubber, but mainly latex. I'm sure, Luke, you've seen that in the gay scene as well. It's mainly latex, polished, shiny, absolutely different to what you see anywhere else as well. So you're going to see a lot of that. And it's all about being a drone. It's being part of the hive, part of the Borg, part of the group collective. So we are losing all our human qualities. So it's really another form of us escaping. The same as you see a lot of powerful people who, or feel powerful or whatever, might want to just lose their power and be submissive. And a lot of people who are submissive in their everyday lives want to take power. So you might find oppositions happen for people when they're submissive and dominant as well, because it's different to their daily life. As a hypnotist, my biggest ethical worry is changing what someone enjoys, wants, or might consent to, or even ask. Yeah, next time, where does it end? I agree. And just the fact that you ask that question is really important. So dronification is all about losing yourself as a human being, being part of a collective. So really, I mean, could you be a drone without hypnosis? That wouldn't quite be dronification. Hypnosis is quite an important part of it. However, some people are just going to play that part as well and not want the hypnosis. The same as we are a submissive, or we're a top or a switch, whatever we are, however we are in any of the things. For anyone who doesn't know what a switch is a person who is a top and a bottom in the same person, and they might decide to go between the two. They can go between the two in one play session, or some will just be a top at this set time and a bottom at this time. So different words for those things. So I think we have to be very, very careful ethically when we start to use hypnosis in sexual things and play. So in theory, someone should talk you through something. Yay for switches. Jerry's a switch, clearly. Is it similar to a dissociative state? It's not a dissociative state. It is a suggestible state. I think that's a better way of putting it. We have the capacity to suggest. When you look at science, and there is a piece of research that Harvard did with people who are in a hypnotic state during guided hypnosis. So, and they found that the two areas of brain that are responsible for processing and controlling what's going on in your body show greater activity during hypnosis. Also, the area of your brain that's responsible for actions seems to be disconnected during hypnosis. So I think that's interesting, isn't it? So our processing and controlling goes up because of hypnosis. So is it our controlling, or is it the fact that we're responding to somebody else? However, the bit that's responsible for our actions gets more disconnected during hypnosis. So this is really obvious. They can talk about placebo, but this particular piece of research by Harvard said they really don't think so. They say that the brain is very suggestive in that state, and when it is through repetitive movements, it's all about suggestion, it's all about repetitive movements. Guided behavioral therapy can be, or it can be hypnosis, or all sorts of different things, and in this case much more about sexual dronification. Is also, it's not, there's nothing sexual about the being that you are when you're covered in latex. However, dronification can be used for sexual activity. Come and please me, come and do this, come and do those things. So that makes a difference too. So there are, as I say, there are risks. So rarely, but it can have side effects. Please be trained. Please be trained. So, because you've got to be careful about what you're doing and what it's used for, and it can be really effective. Honestly, there's really good evidence around pain, IBS, PTSD, and insomnia, as I just said. There is less evidence around depression, anxiety, smoking, healing, and weight. So the research really sits for that first group, more around pain. So when someone is hypnotized, you're very comfortable and you're going to go into a very receptive trance-like state where they'll suggest certain things. Dominic, oh no, Zoe, sorry, do you know what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing? Is there ever a way to stop hypnosis yourself if you're the one under it? Look, people argue that we can be in a form of trance when we're practicing mindfulness, when we're doing something that's just repetitive in and of itself. However, there are loads of people that report during hypnosis, they can't get themselves out of it. They can't shake themselves out of it. They don't feel that they can. So I think it depends on the human being. That's what I think. So you'll find, has anyone here been hypnotized and felt they had any control? Like, because a lot of people will sit there and say, I just couldn't lift my arm. It doesn't matter what I did and what I tried. If the person told me to lift my arm, I could. If I tried, I could not. So I think you have to make sure, you know, someone can't make you do something that's absolutely horrific that you wouldn't do. However, you might do something that you're maybe ashamed of, slightly or not aware of. I had by accident. Can you explain what that means? Beth, you don't have to. I'm curious as to what that means. So if you are in a trance-like state, I think what you have to do is make sure everything is consented to before the trance-like state happens. I remember everything that happened and it was just easy to do what they said. So did you feel like, is it Parisa? Yes, exactly, Mark. That's my point. It's so bloody personal. It really varies. So like you felt like you couldn't control what you were doing. Liv tried in a pub act, not susceptible apparently, but they're not good at mindfulness either. So far, no one's managed to hypnotize me. That's not a fucking challenge. Don't come up to me in a pub. Don't try. I'm not giving consent. It is not a challenge. I am not receptive to it. And in fact, people who like to be in control actually aren't always receptive to it. And you have to be receptive to it. It makes a difference. And because it can't make you do terrible things you don't want to do. However, if you are in a very relaxed state, you might be susceptible and more open to things that you wouldn't be at a different time, if that makes sense. Anyone got any questions about dronification or hypnosis, erotic from that percent? Because that's really it. It's not that much to learn about dronification. It's a shit ton of latex. It's objectification and it's depersonalization. In other words, the person isn't a person. And we're trying to make sure that they behave as one drone. That's the idea. You'll do everything I say mindlessly. I mean, that's not fucking true, is it? Like, it's the same as BDSM. If they told you to jump off a fucking pier end, you're very unlikely to do it. You know, you're very unlikely to do it. So because you have your own safety at heart and you don't always just say yes. Doesn't necessarily require latex. No, but that's the latest trend. That's where it's going at the moment for the like I find, because it's interesting that Luke said it, I find in BDSM and in kink, the male gay scene often leads where BDSM is going to go, which is interesting. Luke's nodding away. Not always, I understand, not always, but most of the time over history, when you look at the history of BDSM and of kink, that's often where we go. So although it doesn't require it, the male gay scene at the moment is fucking all about the latex and it's all really exploding. And it will leak into us. It will. Mark says, has good workshop, good night. Thank you very much, good night. That'd be you then, Liv, that control person. Waits for the gay scene to turn into a horde of rats that we can take over. Yeah, probably won't happen. Sorry, so we just stay in your place, be a good girl. That's a joke, because I know her. It can, however, alter your perception so that you don't think you are crossing your core values, even though you are. And that, to me, is one of the most fucking frightening things anyone could say to me about hypnosis. I don't ever want to cross my core values because I don't know how I would live with the shame and the implication of that once I've done it. Because my values are really fucking important to me. They make me who I am. A lot of people don't understand their values. They're not goals. That it's about us. This is something I wouldn't do, and I just crossed it, and I would never feel okay about that. I know I wouldn't. So it's not something I'm ever going to consent to, because I wouldn't want to cross what matters to me and who I am as a human being. It really fucking matters to me, and my values matter to me. Hypno with a scene, says Lance, must be negotiated, just like giving or receiving a spanking, in my personal opinion. I agree. I think you must consent to everything. I think as well, you have to make sure, like, there's some safety in place as well, you know, because what if you fainted? What if, like you, the person who's doing the hypnotherapy, what if something else happens? Can you give them a way to count themselves out of it? Because, by the way, you can help someone get themselves out of it by suggesting this is the way that they do it. If you see something happen, that's really fucking important when it comes to sex and drugs and rock and roll. Sarah, my friend was in a non-kink example. It was for an entertainment at a magic show, safe, fun space. Said she can remember what they asked her to do, but she was so relaxed that she felt zero embarrassment, shame, and inhibitions. But when she snapped out of it, she didn't have an immediate memory of what she did on stage. It came back to her within the hour. I imagine since none of her values were crossed and she felt safe, she didn't snap out of it during. Yes, and of course, we can also see a video of ourselves later and go, oh, fuck, no, I didn't, did I? Now, we might feel okay with that. So I go, oh, my God. And we might go, oh, my God. Depends on the human. And there, I adore objectifying my S, not keen on the hypnosis side. Yes, objectification. I covered objectification loads last time. Loads of good advice on safety in Wise Guy's book on erotic hypnosis. I'm going to say don't read the book unless you're trained. Sorry. You will, because you'll want to now. And it's a great idea. Please get trained. Look, it's like being a therapist, or like, because you read Google, or like being a doctor because you read Google. It doesn't make you any of those things. I've spent 200 grand fucking becoming qualified. I've got about 5 2-year postgraduate courses. I've worked really hard on studying psychotherapy and studying counselling. And it pisses me off sometimes. Like, I've worked really hard and spent an awful lot of money to do those things. I wouldn't try hypnosis because I've got no fucking idea how to do it. The same as in the kink scene. I'm not going to try and tie you up. I'm going to send you to someone like Opal Fruit. I've got no fucking idea what to do with a set of ropes. No idea. So I'm not going to try and tie you up. I can talk to you about the psychology of being tied up. I can talk to you about the safety. I can talk to you about how to negotiate rope. I can talk to you about, about being bound as an infant and all sorts of stuff. I can talk to you about the safety around nerves. I can talk to you about the biology of it. I can talk to you, but I can't fucking do it. Because actually, I don't want to do it. It doesn't interest me. It's not my interest. Rope, Eagle Scout here, Lance. Eagle Scout, me, Opal Fruit, because, you know. And I think for safety measures regarding hypnosis is agree to things before, and if anything else is crossed, if they do it, you snap out of it, and that's the only time it should be done. But I don't think I'm a fan. I want my control. Yeah, I kind of agree with you, I'm afraid. Or the other thing that you can agree is that you want it all videoed, and that you take the video, it's videoed with your phone, so you know exactly what happened, when, and how. It's another safety aspect that you can look at as well. Okay, so we've done the 3 subjects. I should just make these fucking workshops 2 hours, shouldn't I? I just should, shouldn't I? What do you think, Jerry? Because, like, you know, why not? I've got nothing else to do with my time. Let's not talk about.
I think you should do whatever the fuck you want, but I think you've got loads of other things to do with your time.
I know. I think, yeah.
And we love the fact that you give this time to us, and it's fantastic. But you know, you have a life as well.
I do love it as well. It feeds my ego. Like, come on, let's be serious. It feeds my ego. It gets me clients. I don't need any more clients, right? I do not need any more clients. I am booked up. I'm booked up. I refer people on. I'm very lucky. I feel very pleased that I have that reputation, and I'm really lucky. Thank you. You're very lovely. I was talking to my supervisor the other day, actually. It's interesting because he said, you are very loved in that world, but are you loved outside? And I was like, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And you are my world. This is the world that I live in. This is my world. I was talking to someone the other day, like, you know, when you think of 6% of the UK population are LGBTQI, and I've said this before here, that's such a shock to me, because I'm like, no, it's about 90, because that's my group. So, like, you have this really warped sense. No, all my friends are kinky. They're not actually, but they all understand it. So, but I'm very open and I'm out, so that's a bit different. Right, so Lance, thank you. Very helpful today. Looking forward to becoming a regular. Yay! I'm really glad. Come back. Can't wait. That'd be lovely. Peace out. Pasadena, California. Oh, can I move over there? Can I come and live with you, please? Because, like, I just would like some nice weather. That would be lovely. I mean, that was a bit forward. That was a joke, but, you know. very hard to find a good dominant in London or Brighton or anywhere else. That's really cruel to anyone. Clearly not for me. For legal reasons, this is a joke. I keep saying that. I'm going to get in so much trouble one day. So thank you very much for coming. You're really welcome. You're really welcome, Mind Fonder and Tinglebiss. If you ever want to support me, I'm not asking for payment. I have a Patreon and I have a coffee if you want to buy me a drink as the kink drink. So you are really welcome to contribute or not. I don't give a shit. In order to have the Zoom that I have, I pay an extra quite a lot of money every month just to have this. So clearly I'm doing this for free. So feel free to offer me some money in some way, shape or form if you want to, and you do not have to. If you are here as a therapist, then please come along and ask me for a, I'll type my email address in here. So just tell me who you are. I will send you a certificate for free CPD for, I'm not very good at multitasking. You can tell I don't read a lot of what I do, can't you? I'm useless at this. That's my email address if you want to ask me for a CPD certificate. Copy it down, 85 hours a day. Sometimes I'm really bad at doing the certificates and I don't send them out. I try really hard, Karis, I still owe you one. Please just send me an email and remind me. 85 hours she's done. So people do really well in these workshops. If it's 2 hours a week, that's a shit ton of CPD for your professional body.
Can I become a qualified therapist just by attending these sessions?
No. Look, there are people who do kink workshops and awareness, but there's something really real about this because we're all in it and it makes such a difference, you know. Yes, we can do a course and you can't really become qualified in kink, not really. I mean, I've done psychosexual psychotherapy. You could turn and say, I need to do all the pink courses. I don't. I could teach all the pink courses. Why would I? I've spoken to Dominic about this. Like, that's not, you either know this stuff or you don't. And that's what's really difficult. But I do believe that people should back it up with study. But with all the swearing, we're qualified afterwards. What swearing? I never swear. So, oh, Maryland, USA. Really welcome. Thank you. How exciting. I love this. Is it easier for you to do if I do 5 than ask for the certificate? No, you can ask me. It's really fine. It's either way. Didn't Beth just write something? Nikki wrote great workshop. Thank you. I thought you wrote something about it's really hard to explain. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, you did. It's really important I go back to that. Hard to explain in text, but basically we discovered that certain tones, voices tend to put me in a very influenced. Yes, so that's interesting. So in drop, you might be more susceptible because you're going to feel that you are in a changed, altered state, and a changed, altered state can lead to another altered state. Sarah, you're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you too. I'm a new regular. Yay, I'm glad. And great from Nikki. Thank you, Cinders. Thanks to everyone today. It's been really informative. Dominic, wonderful seeing all the lovely faces and all the learned. A ton as always. Many thanks, Debs. You're welcome. That's my email address. All right, 85 hours. Thank you. Yes, you can choose how you do it. It's very qualified. Thank you. Very interesting. Enjoyed being here. Very glad, Jerry. Really welcome. Once again, thank you so much for tonight, Deb. What you give the scene is amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that. Luna, thank you very much for today. We'll definitely be back. I'm glad. Got to run now. See you all next week. By Domina. Fantastic workshop. Thank you. So it's every week. Yes, it is. And I was going to say to you, does anyone have something they want to do next week? One of the things we're covering, is it plow? Fucking hell, that's not good, is it? I find it so offensive when people can't pronounce things. We love you, Deb. Thank you, Wendy. That's very sweet. What would you like covering next week? One of the subjects I have is expectations of men on the scene. I think that's
oh God.
That's an awesome topic, isn't it? I mean, and that's also how I hit myself in the fucking face. Right. Okay, brilliant. Sensual domination. Let me just write this down because I'm useless. I will forget. 56 and counting. I'll tell you, my memory's fucked. Yes, they're every week at the same time. Sometimes if I'm ill, I'm not going to do it. I do have to have some self-care, you know. Right, so we're doing men and expectations on the scene. Someone said also in real life. Well, that's fucking a 12-hour workshop. Rachel, great information. Thank you for the giving of yourself. Welcome. Thank you very much. And let's do sensual domination. Right, we can do that. Sensual domination. Has anyone got another subject they want to do, or just want to do choosing aids?
That's enough. That's enough.
Actually, it probably will be, but if you do want a third topic, let me know. As I say, I can cover anything about psychology. I say that anything, because I do a lot of this one. I've got the subject just off the top of my head, so this is my information. So if anything's wrong, you don't feel it's okay, please let me know. The ethics of testing someone during play. Do you mean testing or changing boundaries? What do you mean by testing?
COVID.
Your STD checks. ethics of testing during play. Do you mean pushing someone's boundaries? Oh, pushing to a safe word. Yeah, I can do that. Do you know what my message will be? Fucking do it, you cunt. That's what my message will be. But let's cover that in a very nice way. So ethics, testing to a safe word. So we're pushing. Right. So those are our 3 subjects. Expectations of men on the scene, sensual domination, and the ethics of testing somebody to their safe word, pushing them in the middle of the scene. Yeah. And there, first one of these. It looks great. Thank you. Just booked our train tickets to LAN. Yay!
Yay!
Come and grab me. Not literally grab me, but come and say, hey, I'm in there. Hello, I'm S. So please come and say hello. Jerry will be there too. Grace, thank you very much for these, for sharing. Very new to things I'm grateful to learn. Do you know what? Go slow, Grace. Best advice you can ever give anyone. Do what you want. Go slow. Don't believe people who say to you, this is what a good sub or a good top or whatever will do. They're all talking shit. You do what you want to do in your own way. It's really important. It really matters. Amanda, Cindy, thank you. I will be back. I'm really glad, Amanda. I'm glad to see you back. That'd be lovely. Testing, so safe word, there, I'll do that. Follow the kink shrink on FetLife. You'll get the alerts for her sessions. Or if you are a therapist, I put them on pink therapy every week now because I spoke to Dominic and he said that I could. So I'm just going to do that every week. But the link is exactly the same every week. So you don't ever have to worry about that. First time at one of these yet. So grateful, Beth. Next week, curious if you can maybe go into your views and hit the kink more. It seems like you might be able to share about safety. Can I do that the week after? Maybe, if that's okay, if you can remind me, Beth. Welcome, Grace, because I covered it this week. So we have 3 different topics for next, then we'll see. For another week, women's expectations on the thing. Okay, so we're going back to my old thing of like, we're doing 3 months in advance. So expectations of women on the scene, and also really about how to stay safe. How to stay safe in BDSM and kink. BDSM and kink, or generally, or sex. I think this is more BDSM and kink related, so we'll cover that. So I'll do women on the scene. My problem is, Beth, it is my opinion, and my opinion is quite strong about that. Zoe says thank you. Amanda says thank you. No, it says thank you to Cinders will do. Coming to LAM in March. Are you? I can't wait to see you. That'd be lovely. Awesome as always. Thank you, welcome for it. Thanks again. Sarah, yes, women's expectations on the scene and caution required for physical safety. So I will do that for the week after, if that's okay. So we've got quite a few topics for next week and then some for the week after. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you all as always. Thank you very much. Thank you for behaving and being kind and being pleasant and decent human beings. Anything you've learned from this, please spread the word. Do get people to come. It's really good. It's good for therapists and it's good for us. It's just, we need to talk to each other and realize we're not alone. And we need to teach therapists that we're really fucking normal. We're quite boring, really. We do talk about the price of milk. That's okay too. Thank you very much. Lots of love to you all, and I will see you again soon. Do the wanker wave at the end. See you later. Bye. Bye.
Bye, lovely.